most likely to best preserve and protect what information is garnered from the vehicle. In this case, it was left behind. If I heard you correctly the first time around, it was left behind. There wouldn't be a warrant needed, but there could instead be a search conducted right away in that backpack, and that kind of tracing of information of the AK-47 can happen immediately, correct?
It can, but they're going to be very careful in the handling of these things. I mean, depending on where that gun was found. Right now, we are operating on the information that it was found near the scene. If it was found in the car, that would be one further thing tying that individual to the alleged crime, but that's not what we have right now. And again, as Chief Ramsey pointed out, and Chief Ramsey's been around a long time and he's lived this experience, the first story is never right, but we believe that the information we're getting from our sources, which is the flash reporting coming from law enforcement on the scene, is going to be a pretty close composite to how this unfolded. That gun will have to be processed for DNA, for fingerprints. So what the practice that I've always used at the scene, that my colleagues always used at the scene, is if the gun fell with the serial number facing up, you know, to take a picture of it, and then not to handle that weapon at all, because you don't want to add any biological material or disturb it before the lab people get to it. You want to give it to them as pristinely as possible.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. I want to bring in senior justice correspondent Evan Perez, who's with us now. You have more information on someone detained?
That's right, Fred. The authorities there in Secret Service on the scene were able to detain a person. Now, you know, obviously, as John just making reference, you know, a lot of this is very early information from law enforcement. A lot of times it's you know, it's just the heat of the moment, and they're trying to report what they have at the scene. But at this point, what they're saying is that they've detained a person. Now, they believe this is a person who was connected to this scene, and so they obviously, given everything that has happened in the last few weeks, they're obviously very much more on guard and making sure they are aware of any possible threats. And so that's what they decided to do here. We don't know if that person was struck by anything, but now begins the harder work of trying to figure out everything about this person. What, if any, connection they had to you know, any political views that could have influenced what happened, you know, all of those things, the motivations, and how long they've been planning this, all of that stuff is, of course, now a big part of this investigation. And keep in mind, you know, down in Florida, where the former president lives and where he spends a lot of his time, other than in New Jersey, is his club there, you know, he has a great deal of protection. And so that's one of the things that seems to have come into play here, is the extra layers of protection, especially when he's on his home golf course.
Evan Perez, thank you so much. If you had folks at home are just now joining us, we want to let you know the breaking news that we're following: former President Donald Trump's campaign saying he is safe after gunshots were fired in his vicinity while he was on his golf course a short time ago, just after 2 o'clock Eastern time. We're learning that Trump was playing golf at the club, the Trump International Golf Club in Palm Beach, Florida, when this took place. Sources are telling CNN that officials believe the shots were intended for Trump and that an AK-47 was recovered near a tree line area there at the golf course. Law enforcement officials saying that a car was also stopped nearby in relation to the shots being fired. A press conference from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office and the U.S. Secret Service will be taking place soon. Of course, we're going to continue to monitor it and take it live if we're able to do that. My law enforcement panel is back with me now: John Miller, Charles Ramsey, Steve Moore, Jonathan Wackrow. And, you know, John, you made a great point about just tracing, the serial number off that AK-47 in any way they're able to do that without compromising any evidence that is on there. How long might it take if they were able to retrieve that kind of serial number information without compromising any forensic evidence on that weapon before they're able to get a confirmed identity of the person who may have purchased it and any kind of activity that may have happened with that weapon?
So the gun tracing system that the ATF uses is computerized. They can trace that gun from the manufacturer to the store it was sold to. But that's where things can slow down because they then have to go to that merchant. They have to get that merchant to open their books and say, here's this serial number. When did you see it? When did you sell it and to whom? And that doesn't tell us if that person sold it to somebody who sold it to somebody. So it can be a time-consuming process, or it can unfold very rapidly. It's a Sunday. Is that store open? Are they there? You know, it could take some time. But in the context that they have a description of a vehicle, they have a vehicle stopped, they have a possible person in custody who's being investigated to determine whether he was the person involved in this. The tracing of the gun might become less critical if that suspect turns out to be a good suspect in this case. If that suspect turns out to be not the person involved, then the tracing of the gun, of course, and all of this will happen simultaneously, becomes more critical.
Steve Moore, what about what you would see seemingly simple, cross-referencing of fingerprints? I know we talked about not compromising the weapon, but if you have someone detained, you have a vehicle and possible fingerprints on this AK-47, might those be lifted right away with a cross-referencing or a comparison?
Well, the problem with fingerprinting the gun right away is if you do it quickly in order just to get fingerprints, you're possibly destroying DNA evidence and other evidence that would be crucial. The DNA is the stuff that's most perishable, while the fingerprints will survive a lot of handling. So that would be the last thing they'd want to pull off the rifle. So they're certainly going to try to avoid that. I mean, if the gun had, say, a scope or something like that, number one, it would tell you that he wasn't out plinking. It would also be a possible source where you could go to try to find a fingerprint which wouldn't compromise the rest of the whole gun. If it were my case, I wouldn't want them doing that because, as Chief Ramsey pointed out, every shortcut you take now, and by shortcut, I don't mean illegal actions, but every avenue you take to allow you to obtain information without a warrant or without properly processing is evidence that is at risk when you go to trial.
And Chief, it sounds like a lot of information thus far that we're learning, but of course, at the same time, it's not enough information. What are your thoughts right now?
Well, I mean, it's still early. So, it's a lot considering it's only been slightly more than an hour. So this is a lot of information and more will come out over time. But again, there's still a lot of unanswered questions. I mean, was the suspect actually able to fire a shot, or did the Secret Service see him prior to him being able to do that, maybe getting in position? And then the shots that you heard were actually the Secret Service taking action against the prospective shooter. We don't know the answer to that. That's the kind of stuff we'll find out at this press conference. So there's a lot going on right now, a lot of information. But the fact that it's been this long now, they said 3:15, now it's about 3:40, tells me there's more, again, to this story than just random shots being fired outside the golf course that had nothing to do with the president. And they're actually trying to, they're trying to get their timeline.
Right.
They're trying to get as much information as possible. So what they give you is as accurate as it can be, considering the fact that this is early in the investigation. They don't want to speculate. They want to just give you as much concrete facts as they possibly can.
Right. And then, Chief, because I know you've been in this position so many times, you know, with local jurisdiction, also working with federal authorities. So in a case like this, when there is a lot of information, of course, a lot of blanks still have to be filled. There is a conscientious decision-making process with this coordinated effort about what kind of information should be made public. So I wonder if you could take us through that right now, how U.S. Secret Service, how, you know, Palm Beach Sheriff will try to make a determination about what is the information that the public needs to know, what is information that they need to keep close to the vest so as not to compromise the investigation, which is ongoing.
Well, that's going to become more of a challenge if, like John said, this individual that they have right now that they're detaining turns out not to be the person, just someone who happened to be driving the same kind of car, for an example, and you still have someone who's out there that they're looking for. But when they get together and they go through the investigation, they make a quick determination as to what can be released, what should be held back, either because it hadn't been verified yet, or, you know, there's other people that they may be involved in this and they don't know yet. And so there's going to be some information withheld. But there'll be a lot of information I think they'll be able to provide us that at least lets us know that this wasn't just some random incident. This was actually a threat to the former president or not.
John Miller, what's likely happening at the Trump International Golf Club right now? It was under lockdown for a period of time. I've not learned any information as to whether that's been lifted, even though they have this kind of information, you know, to lead them in the direction of the vehicle and a person detained. But what likely is happening there with the investigative phase in terms of interviewing and looking at cameras, videos, etc.?
So immediately, the golf course itself is a crime scene, and that means where the shooter was shooting from, whether that was on the golf course or whether that was from outside the golf course at a perimeter, that's a crime scene. Where the Secret Service returned fire, where their shell casings fell in the grass, that's a crime scene. Where those bullets may have struck and be embedded in a tree, or somewhere else, that's a crime scene. So the golf course has to be sealed now, and that's going to be likely FBI evidence recovery team, the ERT, and Secret Service and local law enforcement, because there's going to be a lot of ground to cover in basically a grid search. That's going to remain a crime scene for some time, and I'm talking about through tonight, possibly into tomorrow, while they literally cover all that ground. As Chuck pointed out, and Steve, they're going to want to look at every camera. They're going to want to look at who's been there. They're going to want to look at cameras going backwards to see, do we see that person doing some reconnaissance in the days leading up to the shooting, as we saw with the suspect in the Pennsylvania case. They're going to want to look at the license plate readers and see what cars passed by there and whether or not any of them are connected to the individual they have stopped. So there's a giant set of wheels that are turning now. And as Steve pointed out, it's better if they turn slowly, as long as they have that crime scene locked down. They'll be looking to interview those witnesses and re-interview them. This is going to be a big deal in terms of investigative resources.
And Jonathan Wackrow, formerly of the U.S. Secret Service, are you still with us? I know we don't see you, but can we hear you still? All right, it looks like, okay. All right, very good. So, Jonathan, I wonder if you could help underscore the importance of this coordination between the U.S. Secret Service and Palm Beach Sheriffs in what is expected to be a briefing that we hope to be able to carry live. It was scheduled for 3:15, but now we understand it will just happen momentarily, and there we're now looking at a live shot, if we can show that again, of them preparing the microphones and that arena for that upcoming briefing. And I wonder, I know it's early. You know, this allegedly happened just after 2 o'clock based on the reporting that we're receiving. But I wonder if you're able to help us discover whether the Secret Service will feel like it is compelled to have the best timeline possible. Because remember, shortly after the Butler, Pennsylvania attempted assassination, the U.S. Secret Service got a lot of heat for not having a timeline. Granted, that was, shortly, like days, if not weeks after that incident. But today, do you believe they're probably piecing together the best kind of timeline possible to reveal publicly?
Period. I don't know what tomorrow was.
What they're going to try to do is reassure the public. And unlike what we saw with the incident in Butler, Pennsylvania, when local law enforcement had their first press briefing, the Secret Service was not there. And, that was a fatal flaw by them. Why? Because right now the Secret Service, along with their local and federal counterparts, need to reassure the general public, one, that the former president is safe. They took the appropriate action. They had the right structure in place to protect the former president. Two, they need to address to the extent that they can that there's no additional threats. Right now, the former president was shot at in a protected environment. They need to assure the public that there are no additional threats to the extent that they know that now. And if they can't confirm that, they need to describe what actions are they doing to ensure the public safety. As Commissioner Miller said, this is just an initial briefing. They're going to talk about what they know right this second, the actions that they're taking. There's a lot we don't know. There's a lot we don't know about the suspect potentially, the motivation behind the shooting, the intent. We definitely know the capabilities of the shooter because they launched the attack, but in the world of the investigation, we're only in its infancy, so we're not going to have every single answer. And I want to make sure that the public, we sort of level set expectations of what we're going to hear. But the fact that the Secret Service is going to do a press briefing jointly with local law enforcement is extremely important in starting to be very transparent about what happened, what is going on, and what the future looks like in terms of this investigation.
Steve Moore, formerly of the FBI, what are you looking to hear from this briefing?
So much. In their command post, the information is coming in even faster than it's coming into us. So what I would want to know is, were shots fired downrange, or as I think it was Chief Ramsey said, was there no shots fired by the shooter and just shots fired by the Secret Service? That would be fascinating to me. I would also like to know whether the rifle had a scope on it, which would indicate that he was out there shooting long distance. I would like to know about the suspect himself. Is he from Florida? What are his allegiances, his alliances, his social media gist? And I'd like to find out whether he's involved in any organizations. There's so much there that we haven't even scratched the surface yet of all the information. But those are the things I want to know right now. How many rounds were fired downrange? And they can estimate that by how many casings, and whether or not this person engaged the Secret Service agent afterwards. Which would mean that if he had left the AK, maybe he had a pistol with him to defend himself, which is another indicator. If you remember Lee Harvey Oswald, after he left with after shooting a rifle, he killed a policeman just down the way with a pistol. So, I mean, this would indicate the seriousness of the attempt. So I guess what I'm looking for is this a crackpot amateur, or are we looking at a long-term plan?
All right. Thank you so much for that. Sunlen Serfaty is at the White House. And Sunlen, I understand you have a statement now coming from Vice President Kamala Harris.
Fred, this is just a new statement in from the vice president expressing that she is glad that former President Donald Trump is safe. This was sent out just moments ago from the vice president's account on X, formerly Twitter, and she says in full, quote, "I have been briefed on reports of a gunshot fired near former President Trump and his property in Florida, and I am glad that he is safe." She ends with, "Violence has no place in America." Now, this comes as we are also learning that President Biden has been briefed just in the last hour here at the White House. Both Vice President Kamala Harris and current President Biden are here in Washington, D.C. They are not on the campaign trail. They have no events on their public schedule. We received a statement from a White House official early on in this incident, just in the last hour, expressing similar, that they both had been briefed and they both are relieved that he is safe. Notably, that statement did not express what Vice President Harris did in hers. She added at the end, "Violence has no place in America." So certainly signifies, as we learn more about this incident, potentially what happened, potentially what the motive is, notable that the vice president here reiterating that violence should not be in politics in America at this time. Fred?
All right, Sunlen Zafrati at the White House, thank you so much for that. Back with me now, my law enforcement panel, John Miller, Charles Ramsey, Steve Moore, Jonathan Wackrow. And I wonder, Chief Ramsey, what are your expectations in this briefing that could happen momentarily involving Palm Beach sheriffs and U.S. Secret Service?
Well, I mean, the first briefing, normally you don't necessarily get all of your questions answered. They may not have all the answers to all the questions, but I think you'll get a lot of information. If this is actually a suspect in this case, you'll get a pretty good sense. Now, whether or not they release a name, that's another matter, because they still got locations they've got to secure, a home, maybe if he's got a business, they want to interview relatives, because the minute that name's out there, media and everybody else is going to be all over it. And so you want to do as much as you can before that takes place. So there's a lot of stuff that still has to happen. But my sense is that you'll get quite a bit of information to know whether or not was this an attack directed at the former president or not. And I believe that they'll be able to at least answer that. And I think Steve raised a good point with this exchange of gunfire. If the AK was actually left at the scene, he had a secondary gun. Did they recover any other weapon out of that car? I mean, there's all kinds of questions that they may or may not be able to answer, but I suspect they'll answer quite a few.
Jonathan Wackrow, formerly of the U.S. Secret Service. We can hear you, can't see you. I'm wondering what your expectations will be from this joint briefing.
Well, my expectations are very similar to what the rest of the panel is discussing, which is we want to know what the facts are right now. Right, this is a very dynamic and rapidly evolving situation. I mean, I think we're less than 2 hours from when the reported initial shots were fired. We do understand that they have a suspect in custody, but again, as that interview process and investigation starts, it may not be the person, or it may be one of many other people. Again, we need to hear from the Secret Service, local law enforcement. Again, what do we know now, and what does the future look like in terms of this investigation? We do know that some items of evidentiary value, to include the weapon, was recovered. We want to be able to understand how that investigative process is going to utilize those items, again, to either confirm the identity of the shooter or start pointing to others that may be involved. Again, the Secret Service, local law enforcement, and the FBI, who will now be taking over the lead role in the investigation of, again, another attempted assassination, potentially, of the former president. What are all of those entities doing? What is their role and responsibility? Again, if you think about, what the reporting has been to date, we also understand that Secret Service agents returned fire, and potentially pursued the suspect. Again, so now we have another complexity, which is an agent-involved shooting. That's another investigation by the local prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office that will also open up. So again, very complicated landscape, not too different than the early hours around the attempted assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania, just a short time ago. So the expectations coming out of this is that there is a plan to investigate this shooting, reinsure the public that they are safe, and be transparent about what does the future hold in terms of the investigation.
All right, I want to thank everybody. John Miller, Charles Ramsey, Steve Moore, Jonathan Wackrow. Appreciate all of you. We're going to continue to follow this breaking news. Former President Trump's campaign saying he is safe after gunshots were fired in the vicinity a short time ago at his West Palm Beach golf club. Officials believe an armed individual intended to target Trump. A person was detained following the incident. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Frederica Whitfield. Our breaking news coverage continues after this.
There is a storm coming, an event like the world has never seen before. The emerging event will have little to do with weather, but more about developing situations that were foreseen many years ago. We have always warned you during severe weather and news events that affected many. Now, Channel 1 Atlanta begins a new series to warn you about what's coming soon and make sure you are prepared. Join us on a new journey, as according to a recent survey, a lot of people believe we are living in the last days. Current news events show us now more than ever. In history, time is setting the stage for the coming storm. A new series, now playing only on Channel 1 Atlanta.
Again, a confirmed tornado on the ground in downtown Conyers. Is a very dangerous and life-threatening weather event. Get into the interior section of your house, away from windows or a basement if you have. And there's the debris right there in the Millstead area near the Rockdale Medical Center. Right. Channel 1 Atlanta.
is CNN Breaking News.
Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jessica Dean, and we begin with breaking news. Former President Donald Trump is safe after a shooting incident near the Trump International Golf Course in West Palm Beach, Florida. The Martin County Sheriff's Office saying they have stopped a vehicle and taken a suspect into custody. We know a gun, an AK-47 style weapon, has been recovered near that scene as well. Now, we are standing by for a press conference from police and the Secret Service, which we are expecting in the next half hour. Let's begin, though, with CNN's Kristen Holmes. Kristen, tell us the latest, what you're hearing right now.
Right, Jessica. So what we were told is this afternoon when Donald Trump was on the golf course at West Palm Beach, that is Trump International Golf Course, he was in between holes when shots were fired. We are told by sources that Secret Service fired shots, and as you noted, a person has now been detained. There was a long rifle, so an AK style rifle that was recovered with that person in the car after they were detained. It is still unclear what exactly a motive was, but officials have told me, as well as our colleague John Miller, that they believe that Donald Trump was the intended target. Again, so this would have been a suspect who was armed, essentially waiting for Donald Trump at a golf course in West Palm Beach. He was on lockdown. The entire course went into lockdown. It is unclear where Trump is at the moment, if that lockdown had been lifted, if he has moved back to his Mar-a-Lago resort, or if he is still waiting currently at the golf course. Right now, we are not intending to hear from the former president, but all of this is still very fluid. Obviously, as you said, we are waiting for several law enforcement press briefings on this issue as they try to sort out the details here of what exactly happened. And Jessica, just to be very clear, I mean, this is somebody who obviously survived an assassination attempt earlier this year, or just few months ago. In addition to that, has ramped up security, and that includes both local law enforcement who are on him all the time, are near him, securing perimeters when he is traveling, including in West Palm Beach, as well as Secret Service. So it's unclear exactly how many more Secret Service officers would have been, or agents would have been, on the ground with him at this golf course. I can tell you from my knowledge that generally they travel in different packs on different golf courses. You have people who are traveling behind him. There are people who are traveling in front of him, all in order to secure him. And that has obviously, again, been ramped up since that assassination attempt. And we're still, again, learning the details here of what exactly happened, where exactly Donald Trump was when these shots were fired. But as you said, the campaign is saying that he is safe, and the Secret Service is saying that they have been investigating this as a protective incident. Obviously, that in itself goes to show you the serious nature of how they are taking this. They would not be investigating something that they believed was random and unaffiliated to the former president. Now, what the outcome of that investigation is, I'm sure we'll learn more details from this Secret Service briefing. But right now, clearly, as officials have told John Miller and I, they do believe that Donald Trump was the intended target of this suspect who was armed and essentially on or near the golf course.
All right, Kristen Holmes with the latest reporting there. Please stand by as we get more information. And just reminding everyone that's watching, we are standing by for a press conference from law enforcement that we are expecting within the next half hour. So we're going to keep our eye on that, and we'll bring it to you as it happens. In the meantime, I want to bring in a panel of law enforcement experts: Steve Moore, Charles Ramsey, Jonathan Wackrow, and John Miller here with us. You all are watching this unfold with us. And John, I want to start first with you because I know you've been doing reporting with Kristen Holmes, who we just heard from. Help us understand what you're hearing right now and walk us through what you're learning.
the former president, and those protective assets, most likely include more tactical agents, both from the counter assault team, sort of the tactical team that will be traveling at all locations with the former president, more counter sniper teams. So when we think about the open air space of a golf course, the long range threat is critically important to cover. So you'd have more counter sniper teams. But beyond that, if you think about the protective model of concentric rings radiating out from the protectee, the outer perimeter, more counter surveillance agents who are undercover agents that are working that outer perimeter, very specifically designed to identify those types of threats that could be lying in wait along tree lines, along motorcade routes, around any other areas. So again, to Commissioner Miller's point, we don't know if the engagement by Secret Service was from one of the tactical teams, or was it from one of these counter surveillance team members whose job it is actually to go out and interrupt the chain of attack. So again, we want to see if that crystallizes, to take a term from John Miller, during this upcoming
and correspondent Caitlin Collins, who is joining us as well. And Caitlin, I know you've been following this story as it's unfolding.
Yeah, I mean, Jessica, it's remarkable to see that we are back in this place in just a few weeks, really months after the first attempted assassination of Donald Trump, as we're now trying to learn more about what happened in this situation and very much still waiting on that briefing from officials to help clear a lot of this up. We know we've gotten great reporting from Evan Perez and John Miller that has been helpful at piecing together what was happening, that Trump was on his golf course when this shooting took place. We're still trying to figure out more about the details here. The one thing that is clear and that's important for everyone to know is that the Trump campaign, when they first confirmed that this had happened near and in the former president's vicinity, that they said that he is okay and that he is safe. Obviously, that is the utmost concern that people have hearing this news, given what just happened not long ago in Butler, Pennsylvania. And right now we are looking at Donald Trump's motorcade. He had not yet returned to Mar-a-Lago. This is an important image here because that is that bridge coming across to Palm Beach. If you've been in the area, it's an island and then it's a bridge to get to West Palm Beach. That's where his golf course is actually located. It's not in Palm Beach where Mar-a-Lago, the beach club, is actually on the ocean front. And so this is the first time that we're actually getting a look at the former president in his motorcade, albeit since we found out that this happened earlier this afternoon, just before 2 o'clock. CNN's Kristen Holmes is also with us and is following all of this. And Kristen, just to let everyone know where the key players are, that's Donald Trump's motorcade. We're watching it closely and waiting to see if he actually speaks to the camera. There's a pool of reporters that go with him. J.D. Vance, the running mate, is also at the airport. He's about to leave Cincinnati. So we do have eyes on both of the members of the Republican ticket. That's Donald Trump's motorcade going over that Palm Beach bridge again. Kristen, we did just hear from Trump himself for the first time in his own words since this happened. What did he have to say?
Appears to be a fundraising email with a link at the very bottom of it, but it is an email talking about what happened.
Kristen, just quickly, I don't think you have your mic on. I just want to make sure everyone can hear whatever the update is from Donald Trump. I know you've been talking to sources, so that's why. But I just want to make sure we can all hear what it was that Trump had to say for the first time since this
Perfect.
happened.
Can you hear me now? I did take it off. Thank you for noting that. Okay, so this is actually a fundraising email that was sent. It has a link at the bottom, but it is Trump responding to what happened, saying, I am safe and well. It says, alert from Trump, there were gunshots in my vicinity, but before rumors start spiraling out of control, I wanted you to hear it from me first. I am safe and well. Nothing will slow me down. I will never surrender. I will always love you for supporting me. Unity, peace, make America great again. May God bless you, Donald Trump. And then, as I noted, there is a link there to a fundraising page. Just one thing to quickly note, as you were saying about this West Palm Beach Golf Club and going over to Mar-a-Lago, he has been under a lockdown at the West Palm Beach International Golf Club since this incident took place. So this means that has now lifted, that they believe, Secret Service believes, and law enforcement believe that the position that he is in is now safe enough for him to travel in that motorcade, as you noted, back to Mar-a-Lago. His team has been waiting to see when he would be allowed to go back to his Mar-a-Lago resort. Obviously, right now the situation is incredibly fluid, as we have been reporting, Caitlin.
And keep us updated if we're going to hear from Trump himself. Obviously, I know you've been talking to people around him. I've been talking to people around him. It's a very fluid situation as they're trying to still figure out the details of what exactly happened here and what the officials know as well. And so we are standing by. Thank you, Kristen Holmes, for that. I also want to bring in my colleague, Wolf Blitzer. Wolf, obviously, it wasn't just that long ago that we were in this situation after what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, a different dynamic there, but we're still waiting to hear more from officials about this, Wolf. And I will say we are expecting to hear from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office an update on this, of what happened and what the officials know, based on the reporting that we have from John Miller and from Evan Perez about Donald Trump being on his golf course when someone who was intending to fire at him did so. And we do believe that a person has been apprehended or detained, I should note, by police, as we are still waiting to learn more, Wolf, about this unfolding situation and certainly hear from officials themselves concrete information about what's been happening here.
Yeah, it's going to take some time, clearly, for the Secret Service, the FBI, local law enforcement out in Palm Beach County in Florida to get their act together and be able to do a briefing, but they say it's going to be coming up soon. Of course, we'll have live coverage of that. Caitlin, you spent a lot of time as a White House correspondent. I spent 7 years as a White House correspondent, and I know this is pretty extraordinary. If, in fact, this was, and that's a huge if this was some sort of assassination attempt, two of these, and within a matter of weeks, it's a pretty amazing development right now. I spent years covering the White House. I don't remember when there was an assassination attempt when I was a White House reporter, but give us your thoughts of how incredibly amazing this is right now, what's going on.
Well, I just want to say one thing that is clear, and that when I was talking and texting people about this right away, there were a few people on the golf course with Donald Trump. Some people have spoken to him personally since then. Senator Lindsey Graham posted an update about it himself. He called Donald Trump and spoke with him. But Wolf, I will say that ever since the shooting happened, the attempted assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania, when Donald Trump was on stage at his rally, the security around him has been incredibly tight. I mean, they ramped it up. As you know, Wolf, from covering the White House, they already have a very intense level of protection and agents that are always with the President of the United States at all times. And certainly that has always been the case with Donald Trump, but it has been only increased more so. You can see that reflected in his rallies when he's on stage now and they have the protective glass in front of him, or at the Republican convention when he spoke on stage. You saw 2 agents on each side of the stage, which isn't normally the case. They're not normally up there with him, but they have only really increased this. And of course, Wolf, I should note, this is all coming just days after the Washington Post reported late Friday night about the failures on the Secret Service's behalf. They were determined by their own investigation that they were conducting into what went wrong in Butler, Pennsylvania. And now we're in this situation, obviously, and still waiting to get more information. And Wolf, just to piece it together, because Donald Trump spent a lot of time in Palm Beach when I was covering him as a White House reporter. Where his club is on the actual island of Palm Beach. That's where the Mar-a-Lago Beach Club is. That's where you've seen the events, the parties that he has, the meetings. And it is across a bridge that you just saw the motorcade come over, about probably a 15 to 20-minute drive, which is where his golf club is, the Trump International Golf Course. So they are two separate locations. And there were times, when Trump was golfing in his first term, Wolf, where reporters could see Trump out on the golf course. Oftentimes, CNN's photographers would be able to spot him with their cameras. That's how we would often find out that he was indeed on the golf course or who he was golfing with. So there is some visibility from the road. Of course, Wolf, we're still trying to learn a lot more about what it was that happened here, where Donald Trump was on that golf course, and of course, most importantly, what's happening with this investigation into who did this, Wolf.
And as you correctly point out, the golf club, the actual golf course, is not at Mar-a-Lago, which is his residence over there. It's at a different location in Palm Beach, as we're watching it all unfold. Do we know, Caitlin, if there's always a White House network pool of correspondents who are watching? Hold on one second. The sheriff of Palm Beach County is speaking right now. I want to listen in.
Put out a very urgent BOLO asking all law enforcement to look for a specific vehicle with a tag number and an occupant description. We immediately flooded I-95, got on the northbound lane at every exit between Palm Beach and the Palm Beach line and the St. Lucie County line. One of my road patrol units saw the vehicle, matched the tag, and then we set up on the vehicle by using what we do here. We pinched in the car, got it safely stopped, and got the driver in custody. Right now, as we speak, the FBI, Secret Service, Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office is at the scene. They've responded there. They'll take over the investigation. Our flatbed tow truck will tow the vehicle back to Palm Beach County, and I have a clear understanding from the investigators there that we actually do have a suspect that they were looking for in Palm Beach County.
Do we know that suspect's name yet?
We know his name, and the FBI clearly knows his name. I am not in a position to release that.
I know that Trump posted on Truth Social that they had recovered an AK-47, I think, near where the shooting incident happened. Anything that you can confirm for us if it's related?
I don't know any more about the scene in Palm Beach County than what you and the media have determined. I hear the same chatter. I think that will become more apparent in the next hour or so. It is my understanding from listening to the investigators, there was a very serious incident down there, and I'm sure they'll do some of these here in the near future.
Absolutely. We had heard about a separate accident that occurred at some point on the highway during this incident. Was there another accident involving pedestrians, or not pedestrians, but civilians?
Yeah, there was a serious accident just south of where we had to stop all traffic. We had to clear that vehicle using our bomb detection dog. We actually asked the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office. They came down here, Florida Highway Patrol, under the direction of Governor DeSantis, moved in, took over traffic. But unfortunately, before we could get everything stabilized, there was a very serious accident, and they're working it now.
Do you know the condition of those people involved?
I don't, I'm sorry.
We had also heard from a couple of bystanders that they saw a woman and a child whisked away by deputies. We weren't sure if that was related to this incident.
No, we whisked nobody away. There was a lone driver in the vehicle. That driver is now in custody and in the hands of the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
What was his demeanor, Sheriff, when you approached the car?
The suspect's demeanor I would describe as having a relatively calm, flat affect. Was not displaying a lot of emotion. Never asked, what is this about? Obviously, law enforcement with long rifles, blue lights, a lot going on, never questioned it.
Was he armed at the time, or he or she?
He was not armed when we took him out of the car. Of course, we didn't do a search, and I would suspect that they're getting a search warrant now. The FBI will take that car. We will transport it for them back to Palm Beach County into their office.
How long was the highway locked down to, drivers on the road? Hour?
Yeah, the I-95 is still locked down. I had to come back here driving southbound and northbound lane where it was blocked off and cut across. So I would tell your viewers, don't get on I-95 northbound.
Do we know? I know I had a lot of people stopping me asking if the turnpike is clear. Is that still open?
The turnpike is clear. To my knowledge, it was not involved in this incident.
Going back to the accident involving the civilians, do we know how many were in that car?
I don't have any information on the civilian crash. It's not related to the investigation, except obviously tangentially because they crashed because of the traffic stop.
truck.
Do we know too? I know you don't have much information, but was it two civilians colliding, or were they hit by a responding officer?
Yeah, your question about whether there was the nuances of that crash, I don't have the information. I'm sorry.
Anything else to add, Sheriff, that I haven't asked you about?
Well, we're very pleased with the cooperation we've had from the Florida Highway Patrol. Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office flew their helicopter in here to assist us, the FBI and Secret Service. You could not ask for better interagency cooperation.
Sheriff, how the complications after you got that bolo, how quickly do you think the Martin County Sheriff's Office was able to stop that car?
Yeah, the time between when that may have been involved in this, what he described as this very serious incident right now. And I was going to ask you, Caitlin, as a former White House correspondent, you know, there is always a pool of White House correspondents who travel with the president, cover the president, and they file a report for all of the news media on what they're seeing and what they're hearing. Have we received a White House pool report yet?
Wolf, we haven't, because actually, since Donald Trump is now candidate Trump, he does not always have a pool of reporters with him. He doesn't have the typical pool that you would see with Vice President Harris or with President Biden. And so that is why we're still piecing together more details about what we're learning. Typically, those reporters wouldn't be on the golf course anyway, Wolf, but they would obviously be traveling with him. So there were not reporters with him when you saw that motorcade coming back. But something else that stood out to me from what Sheriff Will Snyder just said there, Wolf, in addition to Trump confirming that they found an AK-47 and that was what was recovered, the sheriff said that they know the person's name that was detained in that car, that image that you could just see. He declined to say it publicly, but he said that car was also cleared using a bomb detection dog, and that vehicle that you saw that is apparently related to this is now in the hands of the FBI. He says that they will help with transporting it for the FBI back to Palm Beach County. It's unclear, obviously, what else is going to happen, but he did say a male driver is in the custody and in the hands of the FBI at this time, Wolf. So that's an incredibly notable confirmation there from the sheriff about where they are in this investigation. Obviously, there's still a lot of questions about, the license plate on that car. Who was that car registered to? What are the details of that? And also where it was in relation to the golf course. When you look at this and where Trump was, I will say, Wolf, the golf course is obviously an incredibly difficult area for the Secret Service to be able to secure. It's an open area. It's shrouded with trees. It's not often easy to get a glimpse of Donald Trump when he's on that golf course, which he, typically it's pretty predictable that he's there. He spends a lot of his time there, and it wouldn't be, unknown to someone that he would be there. You can see his motorcade going in and out when he's on the property. And so I think there's still a lot of questions. And hopefully we are still going to get that briefing from officials in addition to the questions that we just got there of what exactly they do know about what happened here. You can see, Wolf, that the area is closed off. In that area, he was telling people not to get on I-95 as we're waiting to get a more fulsome update, hopefully, Wolf, from officials.
Yeah, we expect that briefing, and you can see live pictures coming in right now to come from the Secret Service, the FBI, and local law enforcement. Jonathan Wackrow, you know a lot about the Secret Service. Give us your sense. How much more information do you think we will get during this upcoming briefing?
Well, listen, I hope that we'll receive a lot more. But, Wolf, when you think about the elements of this attack, right, unlike Butler, where the shooter really was in plain sight for an awful long time, the shooter in this incident, had cover and concealment, or at least some level of cover and concealment along along the wood line. And because of that, you can really start to believe that the attacker actually had some level of a line of sight to where the former president was. Now, were they in the actual range to launch an attack, or were they discovered by some of these counter surveillance or other agents that really constitute the enhanced security measures around the former president? But the key factor here is the accessibility that this attacker had to this secure site. Really, the ease of ingress and egress, and really the thought that there was some level of an escape route. All of this, to me, starts to signal a more elevated attack than something that was just spontaneous. right? You start thinking about the weapon that was utilized, the backpack, the GoPro, the ease of ingress and egress with a specific escape route. So all of these elements, starting to get pieced together, start painting a really bad picture around this attacker and the intent that they had, to attack the former president.
Yeah, it's a very, very serious development indeed. And Caitlin, I know we're getting more and more information all the time, but update our viewers. What else are you hearing?
Yeah, Wolf, as we're standing by for that official press conference that we'll bring to you live when officials are ready, we are hearing from Trump himself in a fundraising email. He posted an update, but also he has been on the phone as well. He has spoken to Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, obviously a close ally of his. Sunlen Serfati is at the White House tracking that down, where I should note, of course, Vice President Harris has been briefed on this issue. She posted an update on this incident, what happened there. Sunlen, what are we hearing from Senator Graham about his conversation with Donald Trump?
Yeah, Caitlin, Senator Lindsey Graham, one of his top allies and friends on Capitol Hill, and Senator Graham said he just spoke with President Trump just moments ago. He says that Trump is in good spirits following today's incident. He adds that Trump is more resolved than ever to save our country. And Graham also noted that he believes he is one of the strongest people he's ever known. So notable that Trump now is working the phones, reaching out to some of his allies and friends, as no doubt they likely will be checking in on him after this incident. Earlier today, we did learn that Vice President Harris and President Biden were both briefed on this incident. Both of them are in D.C. this weekend. They have no public events on their schedule, and they expressed relief that he is safe, relief that he is, saying glad that he is safe after this incident. We all are also, Caitlin, hearing from other members of Congress asking questions about this incident, most notably recently from Congressman Mike Waltz from Florida. He says that he wants to be briefed by the U.S. Secret Service over this incident this week, and noted, again, hearkening back to Butler, Pennsylvania, that incident in July, the attempted assassination attempt of President Trump. He said, quote, "As I've said before, the July 13th assassination attempt was not an isolated incident. We can take our time investigating as domestic and foreign threats are ongoing." So notable there, at least one member of Congress, Caitlin, calling for a briefing from the U.S. Secret Service next week. Caitlin.
Yeah, and I expect we'll probably hear a lot more of those calls from officials as they're still investigating the first assassination attempt, is trying to figure out what happened here in this moment. Sunlen Serfati, thank you for that report. And Wolf, I'll just note, we were hearing from Sheriff Will Snyder in Martin County. For people who are looking at the map or not sure where that is or wondering why it's the sheriff, Martin County is right north of Palm Beach, right north of West Palm Beach, which is where, of course, Donald Trump's course was. And he was talking about where they apprehended that vehicle and the person that they now have in the custody of the FBI. He was describing this person as having a calm demeanor when they apprehended him. Obviously, still a lot of questions for this person. I imagine that's what officials are doing right now, Wolf, but that is where Martin County is. It is just north of West Palm Beach. If that gives us any indication of the direction this person was going in or what their intentions were there, Wolf.
Yeah, that's significant information indeed. Caitlin, John Miller, our law enforcement analyst, is standing by as well. He's working his sources. You're getting more information. What else are you learning, John?
Well, as we said in the beginning of this reporting, this information is preliminary. It was expected to shift and change. What we've developed is a little bit of a richer picture. Law enforcement originally said shots were fired. They believed at President Trump that Secret Service returned fire. As they're interviewing the agents involved and getting this richer picture, it appears now that as President Trump was golfing at whichever holes he was golfing at, the Secret Service team that was with him is advancing forward of that location so they can clear those areas and double check them. And at some point see this individual with a rifle pointing out from behind a tree line or a wooded area, that they go confront this individual, and that the shooter with the AK-47 or this semi-automatic rifle does not fire shots, but is confronted by the Secret Service, who fires shots at him. He drops the weapon and flees. Witnesses see him get into that car. And the sheriff, Snyder, told us, and that's the Martin County Sheriff, not the Palm Beach County Sheriff, that be on the lookout for that vehicle went out. They flooded the highway. If you can still bring it up to the picture of that car stopped at that site, you know, what you see there is a classic vehicle containment technique, or a VCT, where one car gets in front of him, backs into him, the other car gets behind him, and the third car blocks him in, and they come out with those long rifles pointed at him and start to give him commands, which he complied with, and of course then the search of that car. The FBI will be taking over the investigation into the shooter and into this individual's background, and into what he was doing allegedly in that area with that rifle as the former president was playing golf just a short distance away. And that is probably some of the details that we hope to get more on at this upcoming briefing from local and federal authorities.
I'm sure we'll get a lot more information. And John Miller, what does it say to you that they found near the scene of all of this at this golf course an AK-47 style rifle?
So that speaks to, and you know, we've heard reporting. The problem is when people who aren't familiar with guns, eyewitnesses and others describe it. You know, it goes from AR-15 style to AK-47, but we've been told AK-47, which is a foreign-made rifle. You know, the AR-15 is the all-American gun that, you know, Americans knew from what our soldiers carried in, you know, the last 3 wars. The AK-47 is a Russian-made gun. There are many Chinese-made copies, but it is readily available at weapon stores and favored by some shooters. Remember, Wolf, we have a very brittle time in American politics where tensions are high. We have a previous assassination attempt against former President Trump that we all remember from very recent days. We still have the potential reactions to some of the controversies that have been stirred up just since the debate about a number of issues which could inflame people. But we also have, and this is important to note, the Iranian threat, which is because President Trump, when in office, ordered the killing of Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. The Iranian government had vowed to find a senior government official, up to and including the president, to take revenge on that. And we will also recall, just in the last few days, the arrest of an individual named Merchant from Pakistan who was working with the Iranians to recruit assassination attempts for high-level officials on the ground. So one of the problems in this case, as they try to develop background on this individual, he's not from the area and he's in his late 50s, is who is he? Who has he been in touch with? Where has he traveled? What do his computers and other media say? And they're at the very beginning stages of that, with more than one motive out there in the ether.
And it's interesting, in the last several days, several law enforcement sources, including sources within the Secret Service and the FBI, have told me that as a result of the assassination attempt a few weeks ago in Pennsylvania involving the former president, security has been beefed up, not just for Trump, but for the president, for President Biden, Vice President Harris, and other top officials as well. This is just out of it as presumption of caution right now. They're very worried about the attitude right now of what's going on. I'm sure you've heard the same thing.
I have, and this has obviously stretched the Secret Service, but there's a level of intensity around the president, the vice president, who is now a presidential candidate, the former president, who is a presidential candidate, and others. And I think if you look at what happened today, the fact that Secret Service agents were moving forward and managed to interdict this, whatever it was, and again, we're still trying to determine, did this individual get off a shot, or were the shots just at him from the Secret Service, who confront a man near the former president in the woods with a semi-automatic rifle? So we have a lot to learn here.
And presumably we'll start getting some answers very, very soon once the Secret Service briefing begins. And we're told not just Secret Service representatives, but FBI representatives and local police will be at the microphones there briefing us on what's going on. We're standing by for live coverage of that as well. Caitlin, I know you're getting more information as well.
Yeah, Wolf, we're waiting to hear from officials on more on what they know as this investigation is ongoing and what they've learned now that Donald Trump was on the golf course when this has happened. He is now back at his Mar-a-Lago club. I should note we saw his motorcade returning earlier after the club. The golf club where he was, the course had been on lockdown for quite some time. That's why he had not yet gone back to the Mar-a-Lago club, which is, of course, across that bridge inside Palm Beach, about a 15-minute drive away. CNN's Kristen Holmes has been talking to her sources. And Kristen, I understand you're learning more about just kind of the timeline of what happened on the golf course. Walk us through what you and our team is learning.
Yeah, Caitlin, so here's what we were told. We were told that Donald Trump was on the golf course, as we had noted, between holes 5 and 6. He was moving between holes 5 and 6. Now, he has a Secret Service team who is with him, as we have reported. They travel both ahead of him occurred. Then I'm also told that Donald Trump was then essentially taken away in a golf cart. He was with Steve Witkoff, who is a mega donor as well as an ally of the former president. They were golfing together this Sunday, and then they were taken to the course where, as you noted, they were put on lockdown. So really the news here, and John Miller said part of this, is that advance team was the one who first engaged with the suspect that was just a few holes ahead of Donald Trump. He himself was traveling between holes 5 and 6, at least that's what we were told by someone who was briefed on the matter.
Okay, so this is really important because essentially what we are hearing is that Secret Service fired first at this individual as a protective measure, that they essentially, because they walk a few holes ahead of where Donald Trump is on the 18-hole course. Is that right?
Yes. And so they would have engaged with him. They shot at him. We still don't understand if there was an exchange of fire, but we do know that Secret Service did release rounds towards this suspect who was ahead of Donald Trump. Now, this is a very big golf course. That does not take away the significance of this event, but it will show you that they were ahead of him in significant ways when this incident occurred, but still very much in the vicinity of Donald Trump. And obviously, as we have been reporting over and over again, officials do believe the intended target was the former president.
Well, and Kristen, I think part of this is the service and the protection around Donald Trump has certainly been always present, of course, since he became a major candidate back in 2015. But ever since the attempted assassination in Butler, Pennsylvania, I mean, you can see it when you're around him. That, you know, they check everyone's bags, they wand everyone down, that even comes in his vicinity and is around him. But when it comes to securing something like the golf course, as you just noted, it's a pretty large area spread out across several acres in West Palm Beach. I mean, do we have any indication of what this looks like? You know, there are agents with him, but as far as securing the perimeter and making sure, you know, any changes there since what happened in Butler?
Well, what we do know is that overall there have been road closures in West Palm and Palm Beach because of what happened in Butler. That is particularly, though, around his Mar-a-Lago resort. We are unclear if there was any kind of precaution taken around this golf club, which he frequently attends. He frequently holds meetings at. He plays golf at. He even has campaign meetings with his staff there, as well as various lawmakers who come down to Palm Beach to meet with him, as well as donors. So what they did in terms of local PD, Secret Service, to block off this area is very unclear. And as you can see here, it's a heavily wooded area. So you can see in the picture there, they'd have to do a lot to block off that area. There's quite a bit of foliage there, which is what we are understanding. Something came, as John Miller said, from a tree line or that area looking down at the golf course. But just overall, he has had ramped up security at almost every event and at his homes in Bedminster as well as Mar-a-Lago, including those road closures. Just for one example, I was at an event recently where I talked to a number of Secret Service agents who had come from headquarters in Washington, who had volunteered to be there as part of this kind of entourage of Secret Service agents as they've really tried to beef up the security. Donald Trump. I am unclear, and this is one of the things that I've been asking about, when that advance team of Secret Service began traveling with him, because it hasn't always been that there were multiple teams traveling all around him on the golf course. But clearly at this time, I'm not sure if it was related to the assassination attempt or if that's something that has just come into practice in recent years. But he clearly had a team both behind him that whisked him away and nearby enough to him, as well as this team that was scouting out ahead of the holes, and that is the team that we know engaged with the suspect.
Yeah, and that's the question about the perimeter, because if you're going into Mar-a-Lago or going into the Trump golf course, obviously there's a security perimeter or a security measure at the entrance. You go through magnetometers, they wand people down, they check to make sure they're on the list, but the perimeter is a whole different animal as we're waiting to learn more. Kristen Holmes, I know you'll continue talking to your sources as you hear more, come back to us. And Wolf, obviously, as we've been looking at this, it's just this effort where we're waiting to hear from officials about this. But I've just been talking to several people in Trump's orbit that are stunned that this is a conversation that we're even having again right now after just living what they went through in Butler, Pennsylvania with that attempted assassination that we all witnessed on camera where he was on stage. And now, a lot of people who are getting calls or were speaking with Donald Trump today, Wolf, just say that they're shocked that this is, again, what they're witnessing, as they themselves are waiting to hear more from officials about what they know about the person that the sheriff said earlier that they do have in custody of the FBI.
Yeah, and Caitlin, I've been getting texts from friends down in Palm Beach County saying whole areas around Mar-a-Lago have now been cordoned off and roads have been closed out of to protect the former president and others potentially who are there as well. So it's obviously expanding right now, all of the security concerns, which are enormous, given what's just happened over the past couple hours or so. Charles Ramsey is joining us. He's the former D.C. police chief, former police commissioner in Philadelphia as well. We heard a little bit just now from the sheriff from Martin County, just north of Palm Beach County. What goes through your mind, Chief Ramsey, listening to the information that we're getting, at least so far?
Well, I mean, I'm like everyone else. It is shocking that, just a couple months ago, Butler, Pennsylvania, and now we're having the same conversation again. And you have to be concerned about that sort of thing. Fortunately, this looks like a situation where the security that he has, the Secret Service, were able to intervene at a point in time where there was no direct threat, immediate threat, I should say, to the president. In other words, we don't know if it was a shot fired, but it doesn't sound like any shot was fired by the suspect. But it is something of great concern. One thing, though, I think is really important to note how fast the information was put out on the vehicle. They had a tag number. They put a bolo out, be on the lookout, and police were able to intercept that car pretty quickly and apprehend the driver. So everyone worked very fast and it was well coordinated. So as far as communications went and so forth. So that's a good part of it. We'll find out more as time goes on after this press conference. But again, it is very concerning. This is the second time if the information we have now proves to be accurate, not only for the former president, but for all the candidates. I mean, the threats are out there and you have to really, really take them seriously.
And indeed, an important point you're making, because I've heard exactly the same thing from other law enforcement sources, not just the former president, Donald Trump, but for other candidates right now, including the serving president of the United States and the vice president, Kamala Harris, who is the Democratic presidential nominee. Security is being beefed up dramatically for all of them over these past several days since the assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania as well. So we're watching all of this very, very closely. And what intrigues me, the notion that they found an AK-47 style assault rifle. How accurate would that be from a distance on a golf course, Chief?
Well, one of the issues that we have is that we don't know what the distance from that tree line to the actual golf course. I would assume that it's close enough for a person, if he had a scope on that weapon, to be able to fire a round that could have effect. So it obviously is a very dangerous weapon. It's a high-powered weapon. Once we see the weapon to see whether or not This individual had a scope. We don't know anything about this person's background. Does he have military training? John mentioned he's in his late 50s. That's new information. And it's unusual, someone that age to be involved in something like this. But again, a lot of information is emerging. But the fact that the Secret Service was out in front, advancing, and they spotted this individual, that's critically important because, it worked. The enhanced security worked this time.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of investigations, a lot of reviews, commissions of inquiry to make sure that the Secret Service was doing precisely what they're supposed to be doing, protecting the former president of the United States while he's simply out on a Sunday afternoon playing golf right there. So let's stand by for the Secret Service briefing that supposedly will begin momentarily. We're waiting for that. We'll, of course, have live coverage. Chief Ramsey, we'll get back to you. Thank you very, very much. I think we have Randy Kay on the phone for us. Oh, she's live for us right now. Randy, you're there outside Mar-a-Lago. Tell us what you're hearing and what you're seeing right now.
Actually, Wolf, we're right outside here at Trump International Golf Course, not too far from Mar-a-Lago. But I can tell you that the law enforcement presence is certainly real here. Just getting here was a challenge. Just speaking to that for a moment, I came from where I was about 25 minutes away, and it took me quite some time to get here, even just getting down Highway 95, which I know the Martin County Sheriff was talking about earlier. It was completely shut down. There's law enforcement presence throughout. And then I was about 2 minutes from this live shot location. We all got pushed into a parking lot that included myself, other cars, people on bicycles, pedestrians, quickly put away into this other, put to the side, this other parking lot, because that was when the motorcade was just about to move. They were had finally deemed it safe to move the former president from here at Trump International. So we did get some video of that, of the motorcade moving. But Wolf, this has been on lockdown. As you know, the golf course went into lockdown immediately when those shots were fired, those Secret Service firing at that individual who was later apprehended. But I can tell you that it's still very much an active scene here. There's, as you can see, more security outside Trump International Golf Course here. There's a gate to get into the golf course, Wolf. But as you can imagine, a golf course on a Sunday, it could be busy. There's certainly a lot of ground to cover. And when you heard John Miller talking about Secret Service spotting that individual through the trees, or seeing the rifle at least pointing through the trees on that golf course, that is certainly incredible that they were able to do that when it's so difficult just to get inside Trump International. So once again, it does appear that the former president has left here. He is safe. We saw about 10 cars going by. And just getting back, just one note, Wolf, just because I do live here in Florida, Martin County, where they did put out the bolo to apprehend this individual, that is about an hour from the front gate of this golf course. So it's about an hour north. So just to give you some idea of where this all went down in terms of timing and in terms of location, Wolf.
All right, Randy Kay on the scene for us, as she always is. Randy, thank you very, very much. Caitlin, this story has so many questions right now that are crying out for answers. We should be getting some of those answers soon when we have live coverage of that Secret Service briefing. We expect it to begin fairly soon.
Yeah, Wolf, and I do want to read you a new statement that we have just gotten in here at CNN from the FBI about what has happened at Donald Trump's golf course down in West Palm Beach, Florida. I'm quoting the FBI now. They says the FBI has responded to West Palm Beach, Florida, and is investigating what appears to be an attempted assassination of former President Trump. Wolf, it is just that one sentence from the FBI. We are waiting to learn more, but it is absolutely stunning that just a few weeks after what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, with the attempted assassination that we all watched and witnessed on camera during his rally that day, now the FBI says they are investigating what appears to be a second attempted assassination of Donald Trump, Wolf. And it's just, it's remarkable. They're still investigating the first attempted assassination, and now here they are on scene in Palm Beach, Florida, dealing with what they say appears to be a second one, Wolf.
Yeah, and we all remember the video from that first assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, when that bullet grazed the president's ear. We remember the blood coming out of the president's ear. In this particular case, the president is fine. He was not hit. He's safe. and that was immediately released by his campaign in a formal statement, and thank God for that. But we're watching all of this so closely right now. An attempted assassination, a second attempted assassination, and that's from the FBI. That's what they're saying. Are they giving in their statement, Caitlin, any additional explanation of why they're calling it an attempted assassination?
No, Wolf, but this reminds me of exactly what happened that day in Butler, Pennsylvania, when there were so many questions initially after Trump was rushed off stage. Obviously, we all saw the blood on his face immediately after, but there were questions about what the FBI was officially calling it. I mean, we knew what we had witnessed, but there were questions about what had happened, and then it was later on when they, chillingly referred to it as that for the first time in print. This is now the second time that we are seeing them refer to it as what they believe and what they are investigating, what appears to be, is the language they use, the word appears to be an attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. Obviously something that his team is also still reeling from. Kristen Holmes has been talking to her sources about this. And Kristen, what more are you hearing from officials? Because obviously in a weekend like this, Donald Trump is not often surrounded by a ton of his political team. We know Steve Witkoff, who is a big donor of his, who was with him every day at his trial here in New York, for example, and spends a lot of time with him. He was there with him on the golf course, but it's not like a typical, traveling event where Trump has a ton of political team around him. What are they saying about this new statement from the FBI?
Well, look, they are convinced that he was the target. They have been convinced. We were told by officials that they believe Donald Trump was the target. And clearly now the FBI is saying on the record that they are investigating what appears to be a second assassination attempt of the former president. But there are a lot of questions here, Caitlin, about how exactly this person would have had access to not just the golf course itself, but the information that Donald Trump would have been at the golf course. They would have had to have been looking at him closely and his schedule. I can tell you, just for example, last week, he bounced around between Trump Tower in New York, Bedminster, and Mar-a-Lago, and that was all in between various campaign events. People who are even some of his closest allies didn't know that he was currently at Mar-a-Lago in West Palm Beach, let alone that he was out on the golf course today. It's incredibly hot in Florida, not clear that it would be a golfing day. This is something that his campaign is already asking questions about. How did this person potentially have the kind of information of his whereabouts that even some of his closest staff didn't know where he was? Now, I've also talked to a number of people. Just a reminder, they did move campaign headquarters down to West Palm.
Suspected person with weapons while Trump was golfing. An AK-style firearm was recovered near the course where the shots were fired. The course was partially shut down for Trump as he played. As per likely common protocol, agents were a few holes ahead when they noticed a person with a firearm. Agents fired when the person appeared to push the rifle muzzle through the fence line. The suspect, believed to be connected to a shooting, was taken into custody after they shut down I-95. The FBI now investigating this as an attempted assassination against the former president. And this comes just over 2 months since what transpired in Butler, Pennsylvania, the attempted assassination at a rally in that campaign. So let's just continue to watch this here on Live Now from Fox unfold in real time as they will give us what we know, some concrete information. We'll hear from Palm Beach County Sheriff, hopefully, and also representatives of the Secret Service. Let's listen into this here on Live Now from Fox as they will hopefully step to the podium soon. All right, looks like this is still going to take some time. So Ken Gray, if you're still with me, we're going to continue just our conversation a little bit, monitoring this. And we might just, as we start, as I ask a new question, that's usually the timing of it as they will step up to the podium. So we'll get to them briefly, but we're going to continue our conversation just about this assassination attempt against Trump as the FBI now investigating it. And you kind of mentioned some of the criteria. Lay it out for us again as we head into this press conference. What an assassination attempt is, the definition, and what the FBI is doing now that we know that that's what they believe it might be.
The FBI is responsible for assault on federal agents, and they are also responsible for assault on the president or the vice president or foreign officials. And so this is why the FBI is going to become the lead federal agency, despite that the Secret Service is responsible for protection of the president, investigations for attempts or actual assassinations fall under the FBI. But right now you are looking at a press conference where they are waiting for the responsible part, all the different agencies that have a piece of this to be present there. They all will want to be part of this press conference. And so that's why we've got this delay, is waiting for some of the heads of the agencies to show up here to be able to speak to this matter, and also to make sure that they have the latest details before they go forward. You don't want to show up and try to provide information that you have details of that you cannot share, or that you're not in the position to share at that point. And so that's why we're seeing a delay right now, is just simply getting the people there and making sure that they have the facts that they can share at that moment.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And I believe I asked you if we thought it would be Palm Beach, the sheriff, or Secret Service, and what they might be. And of course, we didn't know at that point, but it appears that Secret Service would be on hand from this. And maybe how much of an information can we gather from the fact that they are likely going to speak, and how much information can the Secret Service give? Because like you mentioned, they are in terms of protecting the individual, the FBI in terms of the investigation. What kind of details does it tell you that the Secret Service might provide an update?
Let me remind you that their title is Secret Service. And consequently, they're not going to give you a lot of details about what they do to protect the president, or what they do where there might have been an incident against the president, and that there was a gap in coverage or a possible problem there with it. They just don't give that information because it's not in their nature to provide details about what they do. That as a Secret Service, they are protecting the president here. And while on the other hand, the FBI, they say that's why they put the I in the FBI, is to do investigation.
Yeah.
And so you will be seeing the results of or hear about what the FBI is finding in their initial investigation, but it's all coming from other law enforcement.
All
I'll
right.
shut up while they talk.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's get out there to this, Ken. Thanks so much. Let's listen in to what they have to say here as they're investigating this assassination attempt. Let's listen in.
We have everything. All right. So when we get done, think about your questions, because we're not going to take a lot. And keep them to the information that you heard. Don't get into what ifs, and because of this, we're not going to go there. All right. So keep that in mind, and we'll be good. So here we go. All right, 1:30 this afternoon. Call came out, shots fired. That was called in by the Secret Service. Because we're in constant contact with them all the time, we were notified of that, and we had units here that immediately sealed off the area. Fortunately, we were able to locate a witness that came to us and said, hey, I saw the guy running out of the bushes. He jumped into a black Nissan, and I took a picture of the vehicle and the tag, which was great. So we had that information. Our real-time crime center put it out to the license plate readers. And we were able to get a hit on that vehicle on I-95 as it was headed into Martin County. We got a hold of Martin County Sheriff's Office, alerted them, and they spotted the vehicle and pulled it over and detained the guy. After that, we took the victim, the witness that witnessed the incident, flew him up there. there, and he identified as the person that he saw running out of the bushes and jumped into the car. Now, this is where this guy was, is a AK-47 style rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks which were hung on the fence that had ceramic tile in them, and a GoPro, which he was going to take pictures of. So those are being processed right now. The Secret Service agent that was on the course did a fantastic job. What they do is they have an agent that jumps one hole ahead of time to where the president was at. And he was able to spot this rifle barrel sticking out of the fence and immediately engage that individual, at which time the individual took off. So that's what we know about the investigation. We have somebody in custody right now that is a potential suspect. We got a little bit more work to do on it, but as we usually do, as soon as we decide that we're going to book him into the county jail and the charges that he's going to be booked into, we'll get those to you and we'll get a picture of him and we'll get you his background. So now I'm going to turn it over to the representative of the Secret Service, and he's going to make a brief statement.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I first want to thank all of our law enforcement partners, to include the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office and the Martin County Sheriff's Office, for their involvement today. Former President Donald Trump is safe and unharmed following a protective incident shortly before 2 p.m. on Sunday at Trump International Golf Club at West Palm Beach. The U.S. Secret Service personnel opened fire on a gunman located near the property line, and this matter is under investigation. I'll turn it over to my partners over at the FBI.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Veltri. I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI's Miami field office. The FBI has assumed the role as the lead federal law enforcement agency in the investigation of the incident that occurred earlier today at Trump International Golf Course here in West Palm Beach, Florida. We've deployed a number of resources, including investigative teams, crisis response team members, bomb technicians, and evidence response team members as well. What we need right now is for the public to avoid the area around the golf course. We will continue to support this investigation with the full resources of the FBI, alongside our partners with the United States Secret Service and the Palm Beach Sheriff's Office, as well as Martin County Sheriff's Office and state and local law enforcement. I would ask that if anyone has any information that may assist with this investigation, to contact our tip line at 1-800-CALL-FBI or at tips, that's tips.fbi.gov. Thank you.
David?
Hi, I'm Dave Ehrenberg, State Attorney for Palm Beach County. I want to thank Sheriff Bradshaw and our partners at the local, state, and federal levels. I'm here because our prosecutors are currently working up warrants and a motion for pretrial detention for the suspect. In that way, he will be kept in custody. But our filing of these warrants and charges at the state level does not preclude federal charges that could be coming. But in the meantime, it looks like the warrants and the pretrial detention motion will happen first. And again, I want to thank the cooperation we've had with our federal partners and at the local level. And thank you all for being here today.
Okay, we're going to make these pictures available to you. It'll show you a picture of the backpack and the rifle. And there's also a GoPro on the fence there where he was intent on filming what was going on. Even though we're going to have to secure a couple of areas around the golf course here, the public doesn't need to panic. We know that we got a post office, a library, and a school down the street. So we'll make it convenient for you to get to all the places you need to go, get your kids to school, get them over here to the post office or wherever else you need to go. It's safe. There's no more danger here, and we'll make it very convenient for you. So having said that, we're going to take a very limited amount of questions, and you can direct them to who you want to answer the question.
Sheriff, did this individual make any statements as he was being detained?
No statement right now as far as his involvement in the incident, and there's further investigation to be completed.
What was his demeanor like?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the Secret Service gentleman
understand. So there was a rifle. So one of your agents saw on the golf course saw a rifle pointing to a fence with a chain link. Okay, so he saw that, the agent.
That is correct. Yes.
And the president or the former president was on the course behind him. How close?
It was 1 or 2 holes behind.
100%.
That because the bubble moves through the golf course, so our agents will get there first, clear it. He noticed that the rifle was pointed out. Our agents engaged. We are not sure right now if the individual was able to take a shot at our agents, but for sure our agents were able to engage with the subject. I don't know that.
Doesn't appear so.
Is there more?
Yep. Al.
How far away was the president? How far away was Donald Trump when this gentleman was caught and stopped?
I got it. Probably between 300 and 500 yards, but with a rifle and a scope like that, that's not a long distance.
For the Secret Service, how far was your agent from the would-be assailant?
That I'm not sure right now. We're still looking into that.
Reports are that 4 rounds of ammunition were fired. Were all 4 of those from your agent?
That is correct. 4 to 6. We're not sure yet.
Was there a long distance? Explaining why?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
WPF 25. I was wondering what how this was able to happen, and for future reference, is there any up security in the golf course?
I didn't hear all that. Say that one more time and talk up a little bit.
So how was this able to happen, and for future reference, is there any up security in the golf course?
Well, you got to understand the golf course is surrounded by shrubbery, so when somebody gets into the shrubbery, they're pretty much out of sight. All right, and at this level that he is at right now, he's not the sitting president. If he was, we would have had this entire golf course around it. But because he's not, the security is limited to the areas that the Secret Service deems possible. So I would imagine that the next time he comes to the golf course, there'll probably be a little more people around the perimeter. But the Secret Service did exactly what they should have done. They provided exactly what the protection should have been, and their agent did a fantastic job.
Which direction was the shrubbery where he was? North, south? I guess east, west, or south is the road?
The layout of the golf course, you've got 3 holes, 5, 6, and 7. All right? One of them runs parallel to Summit Boulevard. One of them runs parallel to Congress. And he was in an area in the shrubbery where he could see both holes. So the president was another hole back, which means he's about between 400 and 500 yards away.
So he was on the golf course?
Oh, he's on the golf course, yeah, but he's back a ways.
For the Secret Service, have you guys changed at all the way that you guys are protecting former President Donald Trump? This now potential second attempt on him. Can you just elaborate on how things have changed and what you make of all this?
Yes, the threat level is high. We have increased the amount of assets that we've supported, so we live in danger times. So yes.
We're done with questions right now. There's really nothing more for us to add. I just want to tell you, the Secret Service and the FBI and the State Attorney's Office have been fantastic to work with. And I can tell you right now, our agency with this real-time crime center was fabulous. That's how we got the guy. We started out with, we don't know anything, to where we had a tag, we had a vehicle description, and we got an area where we saw the person. So be proud of your law enforcement. All right, thanks folks, we'll get back to you.
Where on 95 was it that Sheriff wanted to
Yeah, she'll get the photos to you.
All right, you're just listening in there to local law enforcement and Secret Service and other people on hand for this breaking news event, as the FBI is now investigating what they're calling an assassination attempt against the former President Donald Trump at this golf course. They're detailing some of what was going on as the bubble around the former president on this golf course. A Secret Service member ahead of this group saw what they believe to be a muzzle sticking through a fence line on the exterior portion of the golf course. They confronted the individual and shots were fired. Of course, we're also seeing this picture as it is going to be out there quite a bit of what they say are an AK-style rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks, a GoPro as well. So this is the image that they were showing at this press conference of this assassination attempt. They did pursue the individual. They believe that is connected to this on I-95. They do have him in custody. They said there was no statement yet from the suspect. All right, let's continue here on Live Now from Fox. Bring into the conversation national security expert Hal Kemper. Hal, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox. I know you were just listening into that press conference. They gave some details about the suspect, what the suspect had, the pursuit, and also the threat level. They called it high. What do we make of it? What are the main focal points you saw from that press conference?
Is in custody. And a remarkable statement there when a reporter asked the Secret Service official who was then on hand about security measures being ramped up after what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. And he talked about the number of protectees that they now have in their custody and said simply, we live in dangerous times, Wolf.
Very dangerous times indeed. And I've heard repeatedly from law enforcement sources that their fear is the threats are only going to continue as this political campaign goes on. We have no idea what if any motive this suspect that they've apprehended now may have had, but there's a lot of concern given the fact that this is now what the FBI publicly describes as a second assassination attempt against the former president of the United States. Charles Ramley, Chief Ramsey, give me your thoughts on what we just heard.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of information that came out. 1:30 is when shots were fired by Secret Service. It's still unclear whether or not the individual was able to get a shot off or not. Doesn't sound like they were, unless they were firing at the Secret Service. But the Secret Service definitely saw him. And you had a witness out of the shrubbery, get into a car, and had the presence of mind to take a photograph of the car and the tag. I mean, without that, this person probably would still be out there and police would be searching for him. So that witness really deserves an awful lot of credit. We know that it was an AK-47 firearm, rifle with a scope, which makes it even more dangerous than it would normally be. And that the FBI is the lead now on this. And that information from the FBI that came out now officially saying this looks like a attempted assassination. Again, just 2 months ago, we were talking about this at Butler, Pennsylvania, and here we are again. This individual was equipped and ready to film, probably live stream maybe, who knows? That's the world we're in right now. And I think the Secret Service said it right. These are dangerous times right now, and it's straining resources of Secret Service, U.S. Marshal Service. We never talk about the Marshal Service, but the Marshal Service resources are strained for protecting individuals that don't fall under Secret Service protection. So these are just very, very dangerous times. That perimeter was not secure. In the future, I imagine it will be, but still, that Secret Service agent was able to spot the barrel of the gun and prevent a tragedy from occurring.
All right, stand by, Chief Ramsey. Andrew McCabe is with us as well, former Deputy Director of the FBI, CNN law enforcement analyst. We're showing our viewers on the right side of the screen some pictures that they just released at this news conference. The backpack, 2 backpacks that were found, including a GoPro that was in one of the backpacks, including this AK-47 with a scope. That means they can target somebody from a distance, a far distance. An AK-47 has an enormous range, and with a scope, you can actually target someone for assassination. The FBI is now calling this, Andrew, an attempted assassination. It appears to be, in their words, I'll give you exactly what they said. What appears to be an attempted assassination of Trump. This would be the second time in the past 2 months of an attempted assassination of the former president of the United States. Give us your thoughts, Andrew.
Well, it is definitely an attempted assassination, Wolf. I mean, we'll have to see what the suspect ultimately says, and if the FBI investigation is successful in unearthing some evidence of his motives. But I think it's pretty fair to say, we know likely what he was trying to accomplish there, hiding in the bushes outside the golf club. As Chief Ramsey mentioned, once again, this is the second time that we have averted a disaster, and really we got really lucky on 2 counts this time. One is, of course, that the Secret Service officer noticed the barrel of a gun sticking through that chain link fence. And imagine this, you're standing on a golf course, you're looking to the fence. Behind the fence is all kinds of different shrubbery and bushes and trees and things like that. That barrel of the gun typically would blend right into that background. So what an amazing kind of heads up, ever vigilant approach by that Secret Service officer. And then the second huge break was the witness, a witness who happens to see the guy running out of the woods and has the presence of mind to take a photograph of the vehicle he gets in and the license plate on the vehicle. So that's what enabled the very quick response by law enforcement to identify him on 95 heading north, fleeing the area, and of course taking him into custody. As for the AK-47, I mean, it's a very capable rifle. It shoots a fairly large, a bullet that the AK-47 shoots is larger and more powerful than what we normally see in the weapons that are used at mass shooting events. The weapon that was used at Butler, the AR-15, the bullet from the AK-47 is about similar to a .30 caliber round, which is the round that's used by law enforcement snipers. So could it travel 500 yards accurately? Absolutely. The scope helps the shooter shoot accurately. It's going to take a little bit of training and practice to get somebody to deliver a round like that accurately at that distance, but certainly within the realm of possibility. We don't know if this individual had any law enforcement or a military background, or if he's got any shooting or marksmanship in his background, but those are all things that the FBI will be looking into. Because we have a live shooter, unlike Butler, this is a case that's going to be, and an investigation that's going to be driving towards prosecuting this individual successfully and putting him in jail for a long time. So you can bet that we'll see search warrants executed later on this evening. We'll see a lot of FBI folks at his residence, maybe at his work. You'll see that vehicle impounded and searched, and they are going to be looking for all of the pieces of evidence that might indicate planning, motive, and whether or not any other individuals knew about what he was doing and may have helped him plan or anything like that.
In addition to the scope on that AK-47 rifle, which was intended, according to the FBI, for an assassination of the former president, the fact that they found this GoPro equipment in one of the backpacks as well suggests to me, and I wonder, Andrew, if it suggests to you that this suspect had some political motive, wanted publicity, wanted to get a lot of exposure for what was going on.
It certainly indicates to me that he was looking for exposure. What we've learned through so many of these mass shootings and episodes of political violence, sometimes it can be very hard to identify a specific political motive. For instance, case in point is the Butler shooter, who at this point we still have not unearthed a very clear, clearly he was trying to kill Donald Trump, but a strong ideological reason for doing so, they haven't been able to identify that yet. So we'll see if we find that here. But no question, Wolf, you're absolutely right. The presence of the GoPro is an effort to preserve the images of this attack so that the shooter could use that for some purpose in the future, either to pump up his own image and glorification online, things of that nature. We know that mass shooters do that a lot. It's very important to them to communicate their success, their attack online. May have just been that, or it may have been some ideologically motivated, politically motivated act. Right now, it's super early in the investigation, but those are definitely the things we're going to be looking to hear from the FBI as they learn more.
And is the FBI, Andrew, and you're former deputy director of the FBI, is the FBI now in charge of this investigation, not the Secret Service, not the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office? It's the FBI which is in charge. Is that right?
They absolutely are, Wolf. As you know, under Presidential Directive 12333, the FBI has primary responsibility for investigating any acts of terrorism here in the United States. This would certainly be considered an act of terrorism, possibly domestic terrorism, although, again, we'll wait and see as we get more details about this shooter. But absolutely, the FBI would be the lead agency. And that doesn't mean they'll do it by themselves. They clearly will work very closely with the Secret Service and also with the Palm Beach County and Martin County Sheriff's offices. But you will see the Bureau kind of taking the lead role on the execution of search warrants, the collection of evidence, the preservation of evidence. And then I would expect pretty soon you're going to hear about Southern District of Florida prosecutors weighing in as to whether or not this person will also be charged at the federal level.
Yeah, I suspect that will happen. And we did hear Dave Ehrenberg, the Palm Beach County attorney, suggesting that there would be probably state charges, local charges, as well as eventually federal charges as well. I suspect that's what's going on right now. Our Andrew McCabe, everyone else, stand by. Caitlin, we're getting a lot of information right now to digest, and I presumably believe in the next few minutes and hours, we're going to get a whole lot more.
Yeah, Wolf, that was a remarkable update that we got from officials, and that detail that a Secret Service agent who was advancing Donald Trump on the golf course was able to spot the barrel of that rifle poking through the bushes and was able to protectively fire a shot at that person inside the bushes before Donald Trump got to that hole on the golf course. What you're looking at here is 2 backpacks and a GoPro attached to the fence that officials found in the area of that bushes that the individual fled after the Secret Service had an exchange with him. Wolf, we are continuing to learn more as we are watching all of this. I do want to note we have heard from J.D. Vance. He just posted on Twitter saying that he spoke to Donald Trump before this information of what the FBI is now saying appears to be an attempted second assassination. J.D. Vance says, quote, "I'm glad President Trump is safe. I spoke to him before the news was public, and he was amazingly in good spirits. Still much we don't know, but I'll be hugging my kids extra tight tonight and saying a prayer of gratitude." We'll continue with our live coverage of this, as the FBI puts it, an apparent attempted second assassination attempt of Donald Trump. We're learning more from our sources and from officials. We're going to take a quick break and be right back.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome back to CNN. I'm Caitlin Collins alongside my colleague Wolf Blitzer. This is CNN's special coverage. Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world. We are continuing our breaking news live coverage after the FBI says it is investigating what appears to be an attempted assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump. We are told the former
accessibility, the ease of ingress and egress by this attacker. They had that escape route. The critical factor that we heard during the press conference is the witness. They saw the suspect running away, getting into the vehicle. And I think Andy McCabe said, very smartly, the person took out their phone, took a picture of the car, and then got the license plate. The communication with federal, state, and local law enforcement entities through the real-time crime center got that information out almost instantaneously. And utilizing license plate readers, they were able to track the direction of the vehicle, make the vehicle stop, and get the suspect in custody without incident. So this is a real big success for law enforcement, and it all centers around the coordination, the rapid coordination of information and dissemination to all stakeholders. We heard that during the press conference. It was great to see everybody reassuring the public that there's no additional danger and that all stakeholders within the law enforcement and prosecutorial community were represented there.
And you can see how close this golf club is to Interstate 95, a major highway going all through the state of Florida, all the way up the East Coast as well. Caitlin, go ahead.
While we're looking at this, I just want to keep this image up because you're seeing Trump International Golf Course right here. We're highlighting hole 5 and hole 6 because that's where we believe Trump was getting close to when the agents were walking ahead of him. And what's remarkable about this is they were talking about the 3 roads that are the access points. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office is right there to your top right, a little bit above where hole 5 is. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office and the jail actually backs up to Donald Trump's golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida. And just to give you a sense of what we were looking at on the ground and how quickly officials were able to move here, and they put out that be on the lookout alert for the person that the witness luckily was able to see a person leaving the bushes, emerging and getting into a black car and then driving, which they apprehended on I-95 just north of Palm Beach County, and what we're looking at here on this image. And so, John Miller, when you look at this and what we've heard from officials, they would not say outright that they have a suspect in custody, but the sheriff said, John Miller, that they have a potential suspect in custody. And so when that is the case and they have someone that they are obviously questioning, what we were told earlier is that this person has not made any statements yet, but they did describe a calm demeanor earlier when we were hearing from the Martin County Sheriff about actually apprehending this person and turning them over to the FBI. What does this look like behind the scenes right now?
Well, he is definitely a suspect, and he is definitely in custody. And all the qualifiers that law enforcement uses, potential suspect, person of interest, once the state's attorney took the podium at the press conference and said, we are preparing charges and we are preparing for a detention hearing where they're going to argue that this suspect is dangerous and a flight risk, that means he is on his way to being charged here. Some of the mechanics behind that, Caitlin, were there was that witness on the scene that we've all talked about. He snapped that picture. He saw that person. And there's a Secret Service agent who may have confronted him and seen him as well. But that witness was brought to the scene, and they did what we call a show up, where, they have him in a vehicle where he can look out at the person in custody. And he's asked, is that the person you saw? And he answered in the affirmative, we are told by law enforcement sources, as he did that show up. And they then took him into custody, impounded that car, and so on. There are, 2 different stories in the forefront here. One, as Jonathan Wackrow really well explained, is a combination of old-fashioned police work, shoe leather, grab a witness, combined with modern technology. Here's a picture, here's a plate, put it into the LPR, license plate reader system, look for the first hit. It hits on 95. RTCC, the real-time crime center, is spinning the registered owner of that car, who it belongs to. All of this is happening rapidly, and Martin County, which hasn't waited, it has already flooded 95 looking for that car heading south with units, then does that vehicle containment technique. They block the car in on 3 sides, come out with long guns. And when the sheriff describes, the Sheriff Snyder of Martin County describes his calm demeanor, we have to put that in context. When the suspect gets out of that Nissan vehicle, he is looking at multiple AR-15s and handguns pointed at him from multiple directions in this vehicle containment technique where they've blocked him in on 3 sides. So he can be nothing but calm. And he was compliant with the commands they gave him. and then he was taken into custody. So a lot went right today, and a lot came together.
Well, and Andrew McCabe, when you look at this, and Wolf, I was just thinking about this, when you look at what we're hearing from officials, and you see those two pictures there of the backpacks that were left at the scene that they found inside these bushes, on the right side of your screen on the left, that's a GoPro camera, officials said, that was mounted on the fence, and then two bags as well. Andrew McCabe, when you're an investigator and you're looking into that, I mean, it clearly speaks to some kind of premeditation here of what they're looking into when they're talking to this suspect who was in the bushes.
There's no question, Caitlin. This, as Jonathan mentioned this a little bit earlier, this whole setup indicates a very high level of pre-planning, and that is done because this person, whoever he is, here clearly had the capacity to engage in that sort of structured and organized thought, which is a big piece of this, because that will undermine a lot of different defenses at trial. So you have someone who had the wherewithal, the financial ability, and the kind of cognitive ability to go out and acquire these things, the weapon, the backpacks, the ceramic plates. If those are in fact ceramic plates are used to augment a bulletproof vest to make it resist actually high-powered rifle bullets. So this is someone who went through a lot of effort to really plan this out. I think we also have to remember that they somehow knew where to go. They had some indication maybe that Trump was playing golf on this day. We don't know that for a fact yet, but that's something that investigators are going to be looking for. Obviously picked this location as one of tactical advantage, likely because of the cover provided by the foliage and the bushes that he was hiding himself with. Probably had some advanced knowledge of how the golf course is laid out and where the former president would be proceeding from one hole to another. So this is all a very high degree of planning, which is great evidence for the prosecution. And finally, just recovering these backpacks with the stuff in them and the vehicle that he was driving in when he was arrested. You have a gold mine of evidence here, forensic evidence that will tie, likely, this person they arrested to that backpack in that place with the weapon at the same time. So all those little pieces come together. They all seem to likely lining up in a very damning way for this person. And that's what the investigators and the prosecutors will be looking at next.
And Andrew, a very quick question before we let you go. They said at the briefing that the suspect with his rifle, the AK-47 with a scope, was between 300 and 500 yards away from Trump. But then they said that is not a far distance given the capability of this AK-47 with a scope. You agree with that that's not a far distance?
It's not a far distance. The rifle is definitely capable of it. The scope makes it easier to do. It's still going to require some degree of training and practice on the part of the shooter, but that's not hard to do in this country, right? A lot of people engage in that sort of stuff, shooting sports and things like that. So, yeah, this is definitely a possible shot for a decently trained marksman. So, and it's also been done before. Let's not forget that in 2011, you had Oscar Ramiro Ortega Hernandez, who fired 7 shots at the White House from Constitution Avenue, or at least he hit the White House 7 times, and actually hit some of the windows of the residence on the 2nd floor. Now, we don't know that he actually saw any person or was aiming at a human being. May have just been taking advantage of, trying to get lucky. But this idea of shooters trying to waylay presidents from a far off distance is not something new. We have experienced this before in this country. This is an element of political violence that we are familiar with. And so, yeah, these things are possible. We live in a very dangerous world, as the sheriff mentioned, and the easy ability that anyone has to put their hands on an AK-47 or an AR-15 or a hunting rifle, for that matter, makes this particular threat very important for people like the Secret Service and other security professionals to think about.
Yeah, I remember that incident at the White House. I was reporting from the White House on that day, and I remember how scared all of us were, just the thought that someone from Constitution Avenue could start firing shots at the White House. All of us were there. We were very, very scared. It was a very, very serious moment indeed. All right, Andrew McCabe, everybody else, stand by. Our special breaking news coverage will continue right after a very quick break.
There is a storm coming, an event like the world has never seen before. The emerging event will have little to do with weather, but more about developing situations that were foreseen many years ago. We have always warned you during severe weather and news events that affected many. Now, Channel 1 Atlanta begins a new series to warn you about what's coming soon and make sure you are prepared. Join us on a new journey, as according to a recent survey, a lot of people believe we are living in the last days. Current news events show us now more than ever. In history, time is setting the stage for the coming storm. A new series, now playing only on Channel 1 Atlanta.
Again, a confirmed tornado on the ground in downtown Conyers. This is a very dangerous and life-threatening weather event. Get into the interior section of your house, away from windows or a basement if you have. And there's the debris right there in the Millstead area near the Rockdale Medical Center. Right. Channel 1 Atlanta.
Welcome back. I'm Wolf Blitzer along with Caitlin Collins, and we're covering our live coverage of a major breaking news story. The FBI now saying it is investigating an apparent assassination attempt of Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, says he is safe after shots were fired in his vicinity while golfing at his club in West Palm Beach, Florida. Caitlin.
Yeah, Wolf, and what we've learned is that it was Secret Service agents who were on that golf course with him that fired gunshots at the suspect, who they believe was armed and intended to target Donald Trump. They recovered an AK-47 style long-arm rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks, and a GoPro camera, as you can see here from the bushes where this person fled after he was engaged by the Secret Service. Law enforcement officials tell CNN a person has been detained. Authorities have not yet named the suspect who is in custody. We're following all of this live. We've got all of our experts here and our reporters. CNN's Randy Kay joins me now. Randy, obviously, this is a developing situation. We just heard from this press conference where officials were confirming the timeline of events where Donald Trump was on the golf course when this happened. What more have we learned about how this investigation is progressing?
Well, Caitlin, this investigation is still very much in the early stages and very much underway. In fact, just a moment ago, before we came on camera here, there was a Palm Beach County Sheriff's crime scene van just pulling out of Trump International Golf. Perhaps from the Secret Service after they had fired their weapons in his direction. So still very much underway here in terms of the investigation. But Caitlin, I should tell you, this is a 27-hole golf course. So what stands out to me from that press conference and the information that we're getting is that they were able to, the Secret Service was able to see that the barrel of the gun coming through that fence between sometime around holes 5 or 6. That is remarkable because this golf course is known for its rolling hills. There's certainly a lot of bunkers, but certainly a lot of cover. So this gunman certainly was somewhere where he thought he wasn't going to be seen, apparently. Certainly didn't come through the front gate. There's a large police presence here and security at the front gate of the International Golf Club. So certainly he was along the perimeter of it. And I can tell you that right away they were able to say, once they apprehended him, that there was no threat to the public. That was very important because there's an elementary school right nearby. There's also a public library right nearby. And as you know, he was apprehended in Martin County, which is about an hour north of here. And we're just minutes away from Interstate 95, so he was able to make that quick getaway. Luckily, a witness was able to tell authorities what his car looked like and even provide those photos, as we heard in the press conference. But certainly still quite a bit of law enforcement presence. It took me about an hour and a half to get here. It normally takes me about 25 minutes. So there was a lot of police, a lot of barricades along the way, and that still is the case now, even though we know that Mar-a-Lago is just about 10 minutes from here, Caitlin, and we know that the former president has left the golf club, and we watched the motorcade depart here. So he apparently is safely back at Mar-a-Lago, but still certainly a lot to be figured out here in terms of what went down today. Caitlin?
Yeah, Randy Kay, I was told that Donald Trump is back at his Mar-a-Lago club. Obviously, as you know, about a 15 to 20-minute drive from where that golf course is. Randy Kay, thank you for that. Wolf?
You know, Caitlin, I thought it was really interesting, and I want our law enforcement experts to assess this. They said at this news conference that we had live here on CNN that they don't see any more danger right now. They think that that has been resolved. So even though there was a lot of danger earlier, no more danger, a direct quote from the briefing that just occurred. And Chief Ramsey, what does that say to you?
Well, I mean, they always have more information than we have right now, but they probably at least feel pretty comfortable that there was no second person or third person directly involved, and pretty sure that the person they have in custody is the one that they found there at the golf course. So they feel pretty confident around that, and that's why they make a statement like that. So again, it's just very fortunate that everything worked very well. That witness cannot get enough credit because they saw that individual leave the bushes, and they had the presence of mind to take a photograph. So they had not only a description of the car, but the actual license tag. And through Real-Time Crime Center, of course, they're able to run that very quickly and put a bolo out. And that's how he was captured so quickly. But there are still questions. I mean, when you look at that map, and I'm not familiar with that area at all, but you can see the roadways that go very close to that. And that there was no one guarding that perimeter at all. And I just, it just makes me wonder if that's something obviously in the future that needs to be taken into consideration. It doesn't look like that would be very difficult to do or very manpower intensive, looking at that sight line, having a couple cars on either end just to make sure no one parks a car no one gets out of a car or anything like that when you have the former president on the golf course.
And John Miller, when the law enforcement authorities said there is no more danger out there right now, and immediately said to me, this suspect was a lone gunman operating on his own, and that there weren't others who were helping him who could potentially represent a danger from outside still at large. I assume that says the same thing to you.
Well, it's also a contextual piece, Wolf, because remember, the earliest reports are people calling 911 who, see Secret Service agents who are dressed down. They're not in their suits and ties because they're working on a golf course, who are shooting and an individual fleeing. So the earliest reports were of two people shooting at each other on the perimeter of the golf course, and that suggested a second gunman. Once they sorted out that that was the Secret Service agents confronting the suspected sniper, they were able to frame, okay, so it appears we have a lone gunman, it appears he's in custody, and it appears that the threat to the public around that area is greatly reduced. In the same breath, of course, they ask people to stay out of the area because they've got a big crime scene search and they need their space.
Yeah, good point. John Miller and everyone else, stand by. We've got a lot more to report on. We're standing by for more news that we anticipate will be emerging very soon. Caitlin, back to you.
Yeah, Wolf, a lot of developments coming in as we are learning more.
There is a storm coming, an event like the world has never seen before. The emerging event will have little to do with weather, but more about developing situations that were foreseen many years ago. We have always warned you during severe weather and news events that affected many. Now, Channel 1 Atlanta begins a new series to warn you about what's coming soon and make sure you are prepared. Join us on a new journey, as according to a recent survey, a lot of people believe we are living in the last days. Current news events show us now more than ever. In history, time is setting the stage for the coming storm. A new series, now playing only on Channel 1 Atlanta.
back with CNN's special live coverage. I'm Caitlin Collins alongside my colleague Wolf Blitzer. We want to welcome our viewers in the U.S. and around the world as we are covering our breaking news today in this hour as the FBI now says it is investigating what appears to be an attempted assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump. Yes, just 2 months after the last attempted assassination of the former president, we are told he is now safe. He is back at his Mar-a-Lago club in Palm Beach, Florida. This comes after about 1:30 this afternoon, police were notified that shots had been fired in his vicinity while he was golfing at his club in West Palm Beach, Florida. That is just across the bridge from where Mar-a-Lago is. As of right now, a suspect is in custody, and just a short time ago, we heard from authorities with an update on how all of this situation played out.
1:30 this afternoon, call came out, shots fired. That was called in by the Secret Service. Because we're in constant contact with them all the time, we were notified of that, and we had units here that immediately sealed off the area. Fortunately, we were able to locate a witness that came to us and said, hey, I saw the guy running out of the bushes. He jumped into a black Nissan, and I took a picture of the vehicle and the tag, which was great. So we had that information. Our real-time crime center put it out to the license plate readers. And we were able to get a hit on that vehicle on I-95 as it was headed into Martin County. We got a hold of Martin County Sheriff's Office, alerted them, and they spotted the vehicle and pulled it over and detained the guy. After that, we took the the witness that witnessed the incident, flew him up there, and he identified as the person that he saw running out of the bushes and jumped into the car. Now, in the bushes where this guy was is a AK-47 style rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks which were hung on the fence that had ceramic tile in them, and a GoPro, which he was going to take pictures of. So those are being processed right now. The Secret Service agent that was on the course did a fantastic job. What they do is they have an agent that jumps one hole ahead of time to where the president was at. And he was able to spot this rifle barrel sticking out of the fence and immediately engage that individual, at which time the individual took off.
All that coming from Sheriff Rick Bradshaw, the Palm Beach County Sheriff. The law enforcement officials, Caitlin, have not yet named the suspect who was taken into custody on Interstate 95 after this apparent assassination attempt. And it just happened 2 months after Trump was wounded in the ear. A lot of us remember, we saw it live here on CNN, surviving an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. The U.S. Secret Service shot and killed the gunman in that incident. The FBI says it is now in charge of this investigation in Florida. CNN's Kristen Holmes is joining us right now. Kristen, what more are you learning about this incident involving the former president?
Well, if we're piecing together what we know from that press conference and what we're being told by officials on the ground who are familiar with what happened. So what we're told is this afternoon, Donald Trump was on his golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida. That's the Trump International Golf Course. He was with donor and ally Steve Witkoff. They were traveling between the 5th and 6th golf hole when they heard shots. Now, what we also have been told is that essentially Secret Service had an advance team ahead of them, several holes, and that is who engaged with the suspect that they saw firing off when they saw that rifle. Now, I will tell you that it is also the campaign, or at least advisors to the campaign, who are feel the same way that sheriff felt in terms of Secret Service behavior and what happened. Remember, when that assassination attempt happened in Butler, there were a lot of questions as to why they did not engage with this gunman sooner. We know now that Secret Service, based on that press conference, did engage once they saw the rifle in the brush just off of the golf course. Now, it's not clear exactly how far it was from that rifle to where Donald Trump was, but as we heard during that press conference, the sheriff himself saying saying that with that kind of rifle, which was an AK-style rifle and a scope, it didn't really matter the distance. He was still close enough. So certainly within the vicinity, we had been told by sources, and obviously we've now heard from the FBI, that they believe that Donald Trump was the intended target of this suspect you see there, who was found with these backpacks, a GoPro, and this long-range style missile. Donald Trump, as we've noted, is back at his Mar-a-Lago club after being held for several hours at that golf club as they were searching the scene, as they were making sure it was secure, as they were making sure it was secure for him to travel in that motorcade. It's only about 12-minute ride from the golf course to Mar-a-Lago, but they still had to secure the streets, make sure that it was safe for him to travel. I'm sure John Miller will be speaking about this later, but these law enforcement officials have said that they need to make sure there's not a second gunman, that there's not a second target, that there's not anyone lying in wait. We saw the same thing happen with Butler when Donald Trump went to the hospital, and then we didn't know where he was after a lockdown for several hours until he ended up at the airport. That is all systematic. It is all customary when something like this happens. But of course, this circumstance, there's nothing customary about it at all, because we are talking about, as you've noted, the second assassination attempt on the former president in the same matter of months. It has shooken a lot of those people around him up, and they are obviously asking a lot of questions. One of the main questions is, how exactly did the suspect know where Donald Trump would be? It's important to maintain and to understand that Donald Trump is not the current sitting president. He doesn't have to put out a schedule every single day. He doesn't travel with a pool that knows his whereabouts at all times. He is a candidate and he has security, but this was not an event, golfing at his West Palm Beach Golf Club, that was on any sort of external schedule. In fact, he's been traveling a lot with the campaign travel and his various properties, that there were several people I've spoken to who didn't even know that he was in Palm Beach, Florida this weekend, that he would be playing golf. And these are people who talk to him on a regular basis. So while the preliminary conversations I'm having with advisors and the people close to him say they are very happy with the way that security was handled, we know that after these shots were fired, Donald Trump was whisked away in a golf cart by a second set of security agents, Secret Service agents, who put him into the club again that was secured down. There are still a lot of questions as to how exactly the suspect knew where Donald Trump was going to be and when.
All right, Kristen, thank you very much. Kristen Holmes reporting, doing excellent reporting for us. Appreciate it very much. Caitlin, back to you.
Yeah, Wolf, and as we're breaking all of this down, hearing from officials during that briefing, we have our law enforcement analyst with us. And Jonathan Wackerl, I want to start with you, because obviously a lot of focus has been on the Secret Service since what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania 2 months ago. And now today, officials there at that briefing were praising the Secret Service for how quickly they acted here, that it was an agent who almost unbelievably was able to be advancing Trump on the golf course, to see the barrel of that rifle sticking out of the bushes, and was able to engage with this person before Donald Trump obviously got to that hole as he was planning to do. And when you look at the Secret Service that's around Trump, it's obviously been ramped up since Butler, but is it at the level that a current president has? How can you tell us what that looks like?
Well, I don't want to share too much around what the full protective structure is of the President of the United States, because there is a lot of national security structures that are built into that position. But former President Trump has had a significant enhancement to his protective detail, both in the women and men that surround him on a day-to-day basis, but also in terms of the advanced agents, the technology that's applied to protecting the former president. We've seen some of these things visually. We've seen some of the protective enhancements, such as the ballistic glass that is now with him on all outdoor public events. You've seen an increase of the size. I think, Caitlin, you talked about the detail earlier. You have noticed that there have been additional agents that are surrounding the former president. So what you're seeing is actually the protective structure moving closer to the vice presidential level, which is a significant enhancement from what the protective model typically is for former presidents, such as former President Obama, Bush, or Clinton. It is really a new model for the Secret Service, but it's a model that has to be put into place, because I think, as Wolf, you had mentioned earlier, the threat environment surrounding Donald Trump, both from domestic threats as well as this overarching foreign threat from the Iranians, necessitate this level of enhancement. And really, for the Secret Service, this is unprecedented.
Okay, but Jonathan, can I follow up with you on that? Because here's the question I think a lot of people watching are going to have, which is 2 months ago, what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania happened. It's not just obviously the fact that we saw Trump came within an inch of his life that day, but also what we do know about the increased threat from Iran that has been directed at Donald Trump, at his campaign, at his family that we know of. I think a lot of people will look at this and say, why are they still letting Donald Trump go out on a golf course that has a perimeter that, as officials said there, once someone is in the shrubbery surrounding this golf course, it's incredibly difficult to be able to spot them. There's 3 roads that surround this golf course there. And I think some people may look at that and say, this is someone who golfs regularly. It's very clear when he has left Mar-a-Lago and gone to the international, to the Trump International, the golf course about 15 minutes away. So it's not like someone wouldn't be able to know that he's there. And so how does Secret Service approach something like that?
Well, listen, as we're hearing from reporting, and I'm sure as the Secret Service starts divulging more information around how the shooter was identified, there are specific protocols that have been in place for the former president when he is golfing, and that structure has since been enhanced even more with additional agents. Again, today the model worked where those agents that were flanking in advance of the president, their role specifically is to identify this type of specific long-range threat. Now, the follow-up question is going to be, and the Secret Service will need to address this, is how is the outer perimeter? How is this shooter able to get to that outer perimeter, an area that should have been identified as a vulnerability previously? Again, if you're able to get line of sight from the fence line into the golf course where the former president is in this threat environment, that needs to be addressed fully. And Caitlin, as you may remember, back in 2017, there was a CNN crew that was actually filming the then president of the United States, golfing with a clear line of sight that then was blocked or mitigated by a box truck. But so the thought that seeing inside the golf course from the exterior, this isn't the first time this has happened. So there are some questions that the Secret Service will have to answer for that. But at the end of the day, the protective model that surrounds the president worked. We saw that happen. And more to the point, the communication, the immediate notification by the agent that shots were fired, that there was a suspect. That communication was immediately picked up by local law enforcement, who were able to carry forward the immediate action of setting up a perimeter around the golf course, and then getting the witness to identify exactly the vehicle, the tag number, and bringing a successful resolution to the immediate threat.
And Jonathan, it's Wolf. I just want to follow up on one specific point. Over the years, I've covered the Secret Service quite intensely, and I know there's one level of security for a sitting president of the United States, another level of security for a former president of the United States, like Barack Obama or Bill Clinton or Donald Trump for that matter right now. But there's another level of security for someone who may be a former president who's also the presidential nominee of a major party, a Republican presidential nominee right now. And that's a much higher level of security than just for a former president. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. But Wolf, I think right now we have to put into context, we are in uncharted territory right now with the former president. We are seeing no one could predict that we'd have 2 assassination attempts domestically against the former president. The Secret Service, was, for a long time, they were a little bit on their heels, trying to address this new and dynamic threat environment around the president. Now they're leaning into it with more assets, more agents. They're applying as much as they can to ensure that the former president is safe. We're seeing, physically, we're seeing the control measures that are around the former president significantly enhanced. As I said, it's coming closer to vice presidential, like sitting vice presidential level protection, but there still is more that needs to be done. Again, we came very close to a disaster today, and that is way too close. Again, the model has to be changing to the threats that they're facing day in and day out now, both from domestic actors and potentially hostile foreign actors.
Excellent analysis, Jonathan. Thank you very much. John Miller is with us as well, our law enforcement analyst. John, I assume security is going to be beefed up for all of these major players right now, not just the former president who's running for president once again, but the sitting president, the sitting vice president, who's the Democratic presidential nominee, and some other high-ranking federal officials?
Well, it's hard to increase security around the sitting president. As Jonathan described earlier, that's quite an incredible security package. Nothing is left to chance. And that descends as you go down to lower officials, including candidates. The difference with Donald Trump at this point is the security he's receiving is about as close as you would get to the presidential package for somebody who's not the sitting president, because of the intelligence on the Iranian assassination plot, because of the assassination plot that happened in Pennsylvania. And I think this will bring it up yet another level. What you're seeing, though, is basic assassination of a president of the United States since Lee Harvey Oswald in Texas and President John Kennedy. But what we do know about these assassins are, I think technology has changed this a lot, and it comes to bear here. But we've also seen the personality profiles done by the threat assessment people at the Secret Service. The behavioral analysis unit at the FBI tells us that about 70% of these people, their main goal is to hurt the person that they're attacking. About 38% is their main goal is notoriety, and 12% are anticipating they're going to get killed in the process. So when you look at that GoPro camera, that could tell us a lot, especially if it was rolling and streaming during this incident.
Yeah, that GoPro video camera is a significant development indeed. We'll have much more on that coming up. All right, John, everybody stand by. We're going to take another quick break. Our breaking news coverage will continue right after this.
breaking news.
And welcome back to our special live coverage of the breaking news this evening. We want to welcome our viewers here in the United States and around the world. The former president of the United States, Donald Trump, is safe and secure at this hour following what the FBI is calling an apparent attempted assassination. The second such threat posed to the former president in just over 2 months. And the suspect is now in custody. Caitlin.
Yeah, Wolf, and we're hearing from investigators who say that as this transpired, Secret Service agents fired at the suspect in the bushes outside of Trump's golf course just before 2 o'clock this afternoon. It was actually about 1:30 at the Trump International Golf Course. That's in West Palm Beach, Florida. You're looking at the map right now. That comes after agents spotted this person holding a gun in the bushes. They could see the barrel of it pointed out through them near where the former president was playing golf. Investigators say that the suspect was just a few hundred yards, actually, from the former president and was equipped with an AK-style rifle that had a scope and 2 backpacks and also a GoPro camera mounted on the fence. The Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office says the suspect has not yet spoken to investigators but is in custody. We're continuing to follow all of this. Sunlen Serfati is live at the White House, where Sunlen, officials there, obviously President Biden, Vice President Harris, also being briefed on what has just happened this afternoon at Donald Trump's golf course in southern Florida.
That's right, Caitlin. Both President Biden and Vice President Harris have been briefed on this incident, and Vice President Harris condemning political violence and also noting that she is certainly glad that the former President Trump is safe. We're also hearing from her running mate, Tim Walz, echoing a lot of those sentiments and also adding that violence has no place in America. It is not who we are as a nation. Now, as you said, the president himself has been briefed, and that's something that we saw quickly be released within 45 minutes of the Trump campaign alerting press to this incident. We heard from the White House that the president and Vice President Harris has been briefed. We are also hearing from Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. He was briefed by the acting Secret Service director today, and he noted the quick response and applauded the quick response of the Secret Service, and also said that the perpetrator must be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. A Florida Republican congressman, meantime, a member of the Trump assassination task force that notably was formed after the previous assassination attempt back in July in Butler, Pennsylvania. He says that he will call on U.S. Secret Service to brief them on Capitol Hill this week, and Caitlin, probably the first of many members of Congress who will ask for the same. Caitlin.
Sunlen Serfati, thank you for that report. Wolf.
Caitlin, our panel is still with us, Charles Ramsey, Jonathan Wackrow, John Miller, and Andrew McCabe. And Andrew, let me start with you. We're told now the FBI, your former deputy director of the FBI, is now in charge of this investigation. Walk us through what's going on.
Sure. So the FBI has primacy, as they say, for investigations of incidents, of terrorist incidents here in the United States, and also assassination. So this is all very clearly spelled out in presidential directives that date back into the 1980s. What they're doing right now, Wolf, is trying to consume as much information as they can possibly find about this individual. So they are likely preparing search warrants for any location they can tie to him, his residence. Maybe he has a work location that they know about. If he has any storage facilities or things like that, they're going to want to look in those as well. They are likely interviewing people who know him, parents, spouses, family members, work associates and friends, things like that. When they execute those search warrants, they're going to be looking for devices that might contain electronic evidence. So devices that he used to search the internet, devices that he used to access social media, to send text messages or phone calls or emails to friends and associates. All of those things will be seized, and then search warrants will be served on the companies that provide the services to those devices. So they want to know everything he's written, everyone he's talking to, and they want to take that information and build a timeline as to what exactly he was doing in the hours and days and weeks leading up to this event. And everything they collect that falls into that timeline, all that stuff could likely be used as evidence at trial if this person decides to fight the charges against him. We know that he'll be facing state charges. We heard from Dave Ehrenberg, the local prosecutor, and I think it's likely that he'll face federal charges as well. We haven't heard from the U.S. Attorney's Office in Miami just yet, but I expect that within the next 24 hours, we certainly will, and I would expect to see this person charged. One thing, Wolf, that I think is really important to remember, and we've had some comments about it so far, it's going to be really interesting to see exactly what this person knew when he went to the fence line with a gun and his GoPro and all that other stuff. If he knew that Trump was golfing and that would be coming around that kind of northeastern corner of the golf course at that time, and so therefore he was waiting essentially at the end of the next hole, the 6th hole, that's a very troubling thing because it raises all kinds of questions as to how did he gain access to that information. It's also possible that he didn't know any of that he may have just taken his chances and thought, Trump talks about golf on the weekends all the time. Maybe I'll just go out there and see if he shows up. So these are two, kind of opposite ends of the spectrum on that fact, and where he ends up.
The Secret Service opening fire after spotting a man with an assault-style rifle. One suspect is now in custody. The former president is safe. The details just coming in from West Palm Beach. The Secret Service treating this as a threat against the former president. Agents have detained a suspect and have recovered a weapon. This comes 2 months after the former president survived an assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. Pierre Thomas and Mary Alice Parks lead tonight's coverage. Also tonight, Springfield, Ohio on edge. Local schools are being threatened with violence, and a college shuts down activities after threats were made following the baseless rumors that Haitian immigrants have been eating pets. Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance defends spreading those claims. The Ohio governor calls the rumors garbage and says the immigrants are here to work. A new tropical threat is developing along the East Coast. The Carolinas could face severe flooding. We'll have the timing and the track of the storm. A dangerous turn in the Middle East. A hypersonic missile breaches Israeli defenses, flying 1,200 miles from Yemen. Newly released 911 calls in the deadly Georgia school shooting reveal an overwhelmed system the day a student allegedly killed 2 schoolmates and 2 teachers. Anxious parents put on hold as they were begging for answers. A heartbroken family is seeking answers after a police recruit died following a defensive training incident. What led to his medical crisis? Turmoil in the New York City mayor's office. Eric Adams' chief counsel resigns just days after the police commissioner stepped down amid multiple investigations. The Miami Dolphins quarterback is now seeking medical advice from neurologists after suffering another on-field concussion. And we're counting down to TV's big night, the history about to be made at the Emmy Awards.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us on this busy Sunday. I'm Lindsay Davis. Breaking news as we come on the air tonight. The Secret Service says former President Donald Trump is safe after shots were fired in his vicinity at his golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida. The FBI now says it is investigating the incident as an apparent assassination attempt. These are images of the former president's motorcade. Trump was golfing at the time. He said later that he heard popping sounds. ABC News has learned that an assault-style rifle was found at the scene. Officials say a suspect appeared to be aiming a gun near the former president. The Secret Service then fired shots. Authorities say the suspect fled in a vehicle but was apprehended by law enforcement in a neighboring county. President Biden and Vice President Harris were both briefed on the incident and expressed their relief that Trump was not hurt. The former president survived an assassination attempt at a rally in Pennsylvania just this past July. A retired firefighter at the event was killed. 2 other bystanders were injured. The incident led to the resignation of the Secret Service director and increased protection for Trump and other candidates. Tonight, the Secret Service has increased security around the White House and the vice president's residence. ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas leads us off with the very latest.
Tonight, another security scare involving former President Trump and what's being investigated as a possible assassination attempt. Sources telling ABC News a man with an assault-style rifle was near the golf course as Donald Trump was playing.
They have an agent that jumps one hole ahead of time to where the president was at. And he was able to spot this rifle barrel sticking out of the fence and immediately engage that individual, at which time the individual took off. In the bushes where this guy was is a AK-47 style rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks which were hung on the fence that had ceramic tile in them, and a GoPro.
The former president was not injured. Sources telling ABC News that around 2 p.m., Secret Service personnel saw a suspect who appeared to be aiming an assault-style rifle. The Secret Service fired shots at the suspect, who dropped the rifle and fled. He was later captured a short distance away on a nearby highway. The Martin County Sheriff's Office sharing this picture of the car on the side of the road surrounded by police.
The threat level is high. We have increased the amount of assets that we've supported, so we live in danger time.
The FBI is now leading the investigation as authorities attempt to determine what exactly took place and why the man was at the golf course with the rifle. Officials saying the rifle has been recovered. This all comes as the Secret Service continues to face criticism and scrutiny after a man attempted to assassinate Trump at that Pennsylvania rally in July. Trump and 2 others injured and a volunteer firefighter killed. Lindsay, tonight law enforcement is saying the suspect was 300 to 500 yards away from the former president. Trump again not harmed and said to be in good spirits. But this was truly a dangerous situation, Lindsay.
Certainly was. All right, Pierre Thomas, our thanks to you as always. I want to bring in ABC's White House correspondent Mary Alice Parks. Mary Alice, what are you learning?
Yeah, we know the president and the vice president had both been briefed on the situation. The White House put out a statement saying that they were both relieved to hear that the former president was safe, and they will both continue to get regular updates throughout the day. The vice president also put a similar statement of her own, but also adding violence has no place in America. So far, White House staff directing all questions to local law enforcement and Secret Service. I can tell you there is a heightened security presence here at the White House. The president is here. Lafayette Park right here is closed to the public. Remember, following that assassination attempt against Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania, the Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle resigned. It is an acting director who is in place, and law enforcement grappling with such a heightened threat environment around this election, a political landscape that feels so volatile and just really different than anything we have seen in recent history, Lindsay.
It certainly does. Mary Alice from the White House, thanks so much. ABC's chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl has been following the latest details as well. He joins us now with those developments. John, what do you know?
Well, we know the president, we're told that former President Trump was on the 5th floor when he heard the 5th hole of the golf course when he heard those popping sounds. He's back at Mar-a-Lago. People who have spoken to him say that he is in good spirits. In fact, his running mate, J.D. Vance, just put out a statement saying he spoke to him and said that he is in shockingly good spirits given what happened. I also spoke just recently, Lindsay, with a former member of the president's Secret Service detail, former president's detail, when he was in the White House, who described how difficult it is to secure the area when he is playing golf, particularly at that golf course, the golf course that he usually plays when he is at Mar-a-Lago. This former agent told me that if the Secret Service had not spotted the muzzle of that gun sticking through the fence, that he would have had potentially an unfettered shot of less than 100 yards away, and that this very well could have been a successful assassination.
Wow. All right, Jonathan Karl, our thanks to you. Now to the race for the White House. Ohio's Republican governor is calling for an end to debunk claims that Haitian immigrants in the town of Springfield are eating pets belonging to residents. But Senator J.D. Vance and the Trump campaign are doubling down on those claims. Here's ABC's Perry Russell.
Tonight, growing fear in Springfield, Ohio. A small university, they're canceling all of...
This is CNN Breaking News.
And we're back with our live coverage. The FBI says it is now investigating an apparent assassination attempt, a second one, of Donald Trump in Florida this afternoon. The former president is safe. He's back at his Mar-a-Lago beach club down there in Palm Beach. But this comes after just the second such threat that was posed to him. It was just over 2 months ago that shooting happened in Butler, Pennsylvania at his rally. What we know right now, as of this hour, Wolf, is that a male suspect is now in custody.
And we also know, Caitlin, that investigators are saying that U.S. Secret Service agents spotted a rifle barrel sticking out of a fence over at the Trump International Golf Course in West Palm Beach, where the former president was playing golf around 1:30 earlier this afternoon. The agents opened fire on the alleged gunman, who then fled, and investigators say they found an AK-47 style rifle, a GoPro video camera, and two backpacks in the bushes. The Palm Beach County Sheriff says the suspect was arrested a short distance away up on Interstate 95. So far, he has not been named by law enforcement and has not yet given investigators a statement. Joining us right now, CNN's Randy Kay. She's live outside the Trump International Golf Course. Carlos Suarez is live outside Mar-a-Lago. Randy, let me go to you right away. Walk us through, first of all, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, where you are.
Wolf, I can tell you that this is very much an active crime scene where we are outside Trump International Golf Club. There has been a steady stream of crime scene vans coming in and out of here from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Department, so they are still actively investigating what happened hours ago inside that golf club. Also, this is Summit Boulevard here behind me, one of three very heavily trafficked areas that surround Trump International Golf Club, and as you can see, there is no traffic here behind me at all. This boulevard is completely closed off. The area really still is, Wolf, essentially under a lockdown. There are police flashing lights and barricades as far as the eye can see. No cars except for the media and other law enforcement are getting in and out of this area. But this all went down, as you know, hours ago. There's 27 holes here at this golf club, and somewhere between the fifth and sixth hole, apparently, those Secret Service members, as you said, did spot the barrel of a rifle poking through the fence, and they were able to engage that apparent gunman and alleged gunman, and then were able to chase him down up Interstate 95 and apprehend him. So still so many questions, Wolf, at this hour. But one thing we do know is that it doesn't seem to be any threat to the community, even though it is still under lockdown. Officials are saying that even though they know that the parents were concerned, there's an elementary school in the area, there's a public library in the area. They said you'll be able to get your children to school, and there isn't any immediate threat right now. But as I mentioned, certainly a lot of questions. Who is this gunman? What was he doing here? How did he get to the somewhere between the fifth and sixth hole? Apparently, we know he didn't go through the front gate here at Trump International. There's heavy security and law enforcement there at that front gate, so that was not going to happen for him. So it's unclear how he got settled in that area, what he was planning to do. We know he had those two backpacks, the AK-47 style rifle, according to law enforcement, as well as a GoPro. So still, Wolf, despite the investigation in the early hours, still many, many questions as we go forward tonight.
And we will continue to check back with you, Randy. Thanks very much. Caitlin, back to you.
Yeah, we also have Carlos Suarez on the scene outside of Trump's club in Mar-a-Lago. It's about 15 minutes away from where Randy Kay is. And Carlos, obviously, we heard earlier as all of this is happening this afternoon, the Trump campaign headquarters is also in West Palm Beach, one of their major offices. It was locked down because staff was on the scene as all of this was happening, as there were reports of shots fired, and people were still trying to figure out what exactly was going on. What can you tell us, and I should note that lockdown has since been lifted, I'm told by sources, but what can you tell us about the security presence where you are right now and what you're seeing?
Yeah, Caitlin, so it's important to note that a lot of the security measures that we're seeing outside of Mar-a-Lago, they were put in place after the first attempted assassination that took place in Pennsylvania. Southern Boulevard, which connects the mainland and Palm Beach, is open at this hour, though there are two command posts that have been set up by the sheriff's office. They are right now not stopping any cars that are trying to get out onto Palm Beach. There is a small island that sits between the mainland and Palm Beach. That is normally open to the public, and so folks are able to park their cars there and get a look at the property. However, that has been closed by law enforcement, and so folks are not able to stop there. And then once you get onto Palm Beach, there is a road, South Ocean Boulevard, that runs along the perimeter of the Mar-a-Lago resort. That, again, has been closed since the first attempted assassination took place. It is closed every single time that the former president is at his property, and so only folks that live in the the neighborhood or that are visiting someone who lives in this neighborhood are able to get out onto Palm Beach. We're about 10 to 15 minutes from where Randy Kay is, where this incident took place at the golf course. And it took us a little bit more time to get to this location from there because, as Randy mentioned, there are several streets that have been closed as this investigation unfolds. And so for us to get from that location here, we kind of had to go through some different side streets just to get out east from where this took place. The last time that we were at this location was in late July. That was when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu paid a visit to the former president, and we saw these type of similar security measures that were in place at the time then. They have carried over into today, and in fact, Caitlin and Wolf were being told that before the former president made his way back to Mar-a-Lago after this incident at the golf course, it appears that he may have been held up a bit because authorities were still trying to make sure that the perimeter of that golf course was safe, but then also the roads that he was going to take, again, 10 to 15 minutes from here, were also safe for him to travel. Guys?
Carlos Torres, thank you so much for that report. Stand by, because, Wolf, we do have some breaking news right now. I want to get to CNN's John Miller. We did not have a name of the person who was in custody earlier. Obviously, law enforcement had it, but they were not revealing it to us at that time. But John Miller, you've been doing some reporting. What can you tell us?
Well, we've been working with the name for some time to develop background on this individual. The individual who's in custody is Ryan Wesley Routh. He's born in 1966. He's 58 years old. He has been living in Hawaii. He is a construction worker in North Carolina. When you look at his background, on the criminal side, he has what appears to be 8 arrests, mostly for minor offenses. But in his social media, he goes deep into his self-proclaimed involvement in the conflict in Ukraine, his efforts to recruit soldiers and bring them into the country, his claims that he has been there, possibly as a fighter. So they are looking and digging deeper into his background. And of course, one of the things they're looking at is, what is the motive and what was the purpose of not only this alleged attempt to assassinate former President Trump, but also to record it on a GoPro camera, if not stream it, for what purpose? Is it propaganda? Does it have to do with one of these issues or conflicts he's been interested in? Is it tied to the Ukraine? All of these still open questions now, but we are beginning to get a layered picture of the individual that they have in custody.
John, let me just follow up on that Ukrainian aspect of this. If this individual was in favor of Ukraine and wanting the U.S. to help Ukraine at that at that debate, Trump was specifically asked if he supports Ukraine, what would he do as far as Ukraine is concerned? And he was very, very vague on his level of support for the Ukrainian government. So presumably that's one area of investigation. What, if any, connection to Trump's position on Ukraine could have played in this attempted assassination? Is that what I'm hearing?
And that will be. And there has been much discussion, and you and Caitlin are very familiar with this, about Trump's claims that Ukraine would have never happened if he were here, that he could end it within a couple of days if he were reelected. But there's been much speculation that has less to do with support of Zelensky in that war than his desire to go a different direction. So could that be a motive from somebody who has been proclaiming on social media that they are committed to that fight and committed to getting soldiers and committing to getting support for them? Some of the things we have read through involves his call to get former Afghan fighters and to funnel them into the Ukraine. So there is apparently a significant interest there. Now, whether that is the motive is really secondary in the immediate sense to law enforcement, because their primary job right now is, let's lock this down. Let's figure out what the charges are going to be. State charges, as the state's attorney indicated, a detention hearing to make sure this individual is kept in custody, federal charges to follow based on what the U.S. attorney and the FBI bring forward, and then motive will come behind that. So We may not expect to hear a lot about that in the immediate sense, but it'll be of great interest to us, and we'll keep digging into that.
Do we know, John, if this suspect served in the U.S. military where he may have been trained to use a firearm?
We don't see that yet, but we do have claims in his social media that he has been overseas fighting in Ukraine, which would explain a couple of things. First off, it might explain his favoring the AK-47, the rifle that is most popular in Eastern Europe and Russia and those conflicts. But it also might explain the equipment, his setup, the ceramic plates for body armor, and so on. But again, as you know, we're at the early stages of this, and peeling back the layers of his life, as Andy McCabe said, is going to mean going through all of his electronics, not just what we can see front-facing on social media, but all of those things hidden behind it. Coming from Hawaii, living in North Carolina, the vehicle he's driving apparently is registered to his daughter. She may live in the area, but we don't have a handle on how long he has been in the South Florida area, or whether he just traveled there to carry out this mission, allegedly.
Well,
Yeah,
and John,
very
how old
disturbing.
did you say? How old did you say he was, John?
He's born in 1958. I mean, I'm sorry, he's born in 1966, which makes him 58.
Well, and Andrew McCabe, when you're hearing that, the profile, as we're learning more about this, John just mentioned the extensive social media postings that obviously investigators are going through, but also this is a person who has a criminal record that's been arrested 8 times, John said, for minor offenses. What else are officials looking into when it comes to something like that?
Well, it's really the whole picture they want, Caitlin. They want to know not only where this guy was from and what motivated him this day, but like kind of what was his journey that brought him to this point, because it tells us a lot about extremism generally. It tells us a lot about threat, the sort of things that, for instance, in this case, Secret Service maybe needs to think more about in terms of the protection of the former president. But the small clues, like the fact that he's been arrested 8 times, might mitigate against the likelihood of his having had significant military experience, unless those things happened after his military experience. It seems from the details that John's been able to provide, the most really relevant piece are those comments about having served in Ukraine. That could form the basis of some sort of grievance or political or ideological philosophy that would put him in conflict with the former president. So that's something that investigators will dig into. While it's not necessary to prove someone's motive when in the course of a prosecution, it can be very helpful in proving their intent. And intent is an element of every crime. You always have to prove that the person you've charged intended to commit the crime that they've been charged with. Here, they're going to look for pieces of evidence that clearly lay out his reason for being in the bushes with an AK-47, looking at the golf course, was because he was targeting the former president. They're going to need to be able to prove that in order to convict him of attempted assassination. But it is likely, if he's this prolific on social media and he hasn't taken the steps that a very advanced shooter might have taken to clean their social media accounts before they actually took some sort of action, if he's left this stuff out there and it's still visible for the general public to see, there's going to be a lot of evidence for investigators to kind of sort through to understand exactly what was making him tick today.
It's interesting, and I want to bring Chief Ramsey into this as well. Chief, what jumped out at you from the details that John Miller is now reporting about this suspect?
Well, there's a lot. First of all, now we have a name and an age, and that's critically important because that we didn't have before. But facts like you just finished talking to Andy about, his attitude toward the war in Ukraine, the fact that he claims he fought there and was recruiting people to go fight. Does that make it a motive? Not necessarily, but it's certainly something that's going to cause them to want to take a deeper look at that. And again, the social media.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for joining us as we've been following this breaking news, Wolf, for the last several hours. Wolf Blitzer in Washington. Our breaking news coverage is going to continue. Stay here with CNN and Aaron Burnett after a quick break.